Alright, we're live. Oh, it keeps on doing that. Every time I move the thing, Genshin always does that for some reason. Okay. Okay. It's Genshin Impact Fridays, I guess. But the thing is, I'm planning to do more of like a discussion-based stream once we have viewers in the chat, because I do know that my audience does prefer that format. So we are going to discuss a couple things. Basically, upcoming games for the year. It's gonna be a simple stream, might not be super long, although I hesitate to say that because every time I say that, the stream ends up being super long. Okay, so time to do the dailies. Actually, I think I maxed on, yeah, this stuff, so we're kind of stuck. Well, I guess I should probably farm artifacts. Hey, Joey and Hades. Hey, Hades, you actually joined at the very beginning. I think this is the... Joey almost always is able to join at the very beginning, but usually a lot of the viewers come in, you know, around the 20 to 40 minute mark in the stream. But Hades is here, so that's interesting. Like right at the start. Why is Sino sitting here? You have time for a duel? What? Oh, wait, but I thought I knew how to play the card game. I thought I knew how to play the card game in this game. Oh well. Hey guys, so yeah, we're gonna talk about, if you guys want to talk about computer hardware, that I'm good with that. I don't really have an agenda for a specific game this stream, so it's gonna be more like tech focused this time. We will talk about some upcoming games. There's really not a whole lot on my radar in the next several weeks, so that's why it's kind of quiet. There's not a whole lot going on. I was thinking, although I think that Wolong Fallen Dynasty is a game that doesn't really run it's not too hard to run. At least not compared to, if you compare the games that I've played recently, like Fatal Frame and Wolong, they're not nearly as hard to run as Hogwarts Legacy was and Forspoken. So I feel like to do videos doing GPU comparisons, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. You got your 13900 and all is working now. Start of the warranty return with Intel. Aren't they just gonna send you a replacement though? How does that work? I thought you can't get a reimbursement, right? Are they just gonna replace it? Because it's been more than 30 days. I thought it was like 30 day window or something. That's interesting because I've never actually had to replace a CPU before. So this is new information to me, or this is new. They gave you a choice. Oh, they gave you a choice since you bought another one? Really? Wow, I would have just... honestly, if it was me, I would just get the warranty. Because it's like, yeah, you have to deal with the downtime, but it's not like you don't have a CPU to test. I mean, you could always just benchmark on the other test platform in the meantime. That way you would have had 2 sets of data. Oh, what am I doing? I'm like just getting distracted in this game because it always has random things that you want to loot constantly. Yeah, that reminds me, I probably do need to do some kind of test with mine. I haven't really done much content on the Intel side of things ever since, like, post the launch of that product. Well, I already did that, Hades. Oh wait, you're saying that you want to see Joey do that? Well, the thing is, Joey doesn't have the 3D. He's got the standard one. There's some enemies still. Oh, this guy's like right over here the whole time, just standing there. Like, I've got a grenade. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know. Realistically, the thing is, with the supply, I don't think the 13900 KS is really gonna be a product that sells in a high volume. So it's kind of one of those. It's like one of those. It's like buying one of those cars. Years ago, there used to be a like the car companies used to do like a limited run sort of thing. I do feel like the 13900 KS is that kind of product where it's more of like a niche product. You don't really see that many of it in stock in like a micro center. It was the same story with the 12900 KS. So I tend to avoid those because I personally would just rather buy the standard K. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like with the graphics cards. Like I prefer to test the reference model cards. Like, for example, the made by AMD edition or the NVIDIA Founders edition. Like, those are the two that I typically would test for a review, because I think that the reference product tends to give you the general average expected performance, as opposed to like an AIB model or a factory overclocked model, or if somebody goes and like manually overclocks the product. Because the problem with showing results from an overclock, it's like, yeah, that's good for like personal records and stuff, but for like a review, I don't really agree with that, because I feel like that's distorting. See, the problem is overclocks are not guaranteed because it's still silicon lottery. Like, if you buy like a AIB or like a factory overclocked card, the max overclock is going to be different within that family, that AIB subsets. Like, for example, like the ASUS Strix, right? Like, one ASUS Strix might overclock better than another ASUS Strix, but the general average of the entire group of ASUS Strix might overclock better than like a you know, whatever the ASUS, like the ASUS Tough, for example. But even then, you might still get lucky. Like, someone goes and buys an ASUS Tough edition, and they still end up doing really good if they manually overclock, because they get lucky and, you know, they win the silicon lottery. But of course, that scenario is going to be far less. It's going to be more rare than, you know, someone who buys like a Strix one and they just overclock it themselves, or they just, you know, auto overclock it or something. Like, if in the case of the AMD one, it has the auto overclock built into the driver. which I personally don't like to use because I think that doesn't really guarantee stability testing. And I think, like I said before, I think that most people that rely on automatic overclocks, they don't really... I don't think they're like long-term stable myself. The silicon is guaranteed. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's not really guaranteed. They can't 100% guarantee that you'll be able to, like, for instance, nobody at Intel is going to guarantee that you can run 8400 megahertz stable on the RAM, right? Like, it's not actually guaranteed. That there might be like a KS that can't do 8400, but there could be a regular 1300K that can. See, so I hesitate to say that it's guaranteed. What the binning is better. Yes, it's a better binned product overall, but you know, it's still, there's still going to be enough of those quirks at the microscopic level, you know, that it's not super, it's not like absolutely guaranteed. So it's guaranteed to have been a better bin than like a standard model, but you know, it doesn't guarantee a specific performance from an overclock. That's the correct expectation to have when buying those sort of products. Because I feel like if somebody, you know, if somebody posts a video or like a Reddit post saying that everyone should buy the 13900KS and forget about the 13900K because it's guaranteed, I don't think that would fly too well. I think they're setting people up for disappointment potentially for those that get unlucky. They just look at it using a set of criteria on the bin list. Say you could expect better thresholds from it. No assurance is given that you'll get it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like no assurance. It's not assured, meaning it's not guaranteed. Wait, am I supposed to be fighting this thing? I don't know why that tree in the background fell down. Oh. I haven't done Mondstadt dailies in this game for a long time. The reason why I'm doing them now is because I'm so low on the materials from a lot of the stuff that drops these things that I need for weapon upgrades and stuff like that. Silicon processors are so good these days that I wouldn't even bank on there being a worthwhile difference aside from the 0.1%. What's SP? What does that mean? You mean 1T? What's SP? Like, I don't even know what that is. Oh wait, I'm going the wrong way again. Someone said it was silicon potential? How is that measured, though? How are they able to measure that? That's what I'm wanting to know. How does software application determine silicon potential? How does a software application know how to do that? Because it's like at a microscopic level. Unless it's something that the manufacturing, like, puts in there. Like, they key in that value somewhere. But it's like, software applications know how to do that? Electronic resistance can be a metric? Oh, it could be doing it by leakage. It could be doing it by, like, the... You know what it probably does? It probably looks at what the average voltages are. Like, not just the V-core, but, like, the other sub-voltages. That's probably how it reads, or how it estimates that number. Where do you read that from? Like, what application do you use to read the SP number? Man, why does the chat, like, all just, like, spam all at once? I never really understand why, like, the chat just shows up on the screen all, like, in one big blurp. Marcelo is here, yeah. now it's gonna be a real stream now when Marcelo shows up. Voltage to heat with clocks? What? No. I think it's literally the... I don't think it's temperature. I think it's just voltage. It's on the BIOS? The SP number is in there? Hades, what's the best controller to use for Spider-Man? Oh. I recommend... Joey, I recommend the Xbox Series X controller. Just get an Xbox controller. Like, for those that wonder what I use... So this is what I use. But you won't be able to find one of these new anymore. This is a true... It's not a cheap knockoff or a ripoff. This isn't like an Amazon clone from China. This is a legitimate, real Xbox 360 wired controller, not a USB, not a rechargeable. No, it's an old school USB 2.0 wired control Xbox 360. It has the original Xbox button on there. This is what I use to play games if I'm using the controller, if I'm not using the keyboard and the mouse. So, like, when you guys saw me playing Fatal Frame the other day, like, I was using this. This is what I use for games where I use control. So, I play Wolong with this. Hogwarts Legacy, most of the time, I can use keyboard and mouse, because that game actually has good keyboard and mouse controls. But, yeah, Hogwarts Legacy is the game that I kind of switch between controller and keyboard and mouse. And then for Forspoken, I use the controller because Forspoken's keyboard and mouse controls they're okay. They're definitely better than, like, Elden Ring. But they're not as good as, like, Genshin Impact. But I would recommend the Xbox, whatever the newest Xbox controller is what I would recommend for a controller. Avoid PlayStation like the plague unless you have to use it. Well, I think the PlayStation one worked. I mean, I could use the DualSense, but I choose not to. I just use it with the PS5. Because the thing is, I would rather just use the wired controller and not have to worry about batteries or any of that stuff. Now, you could plug in the, like an Xbox Series controller or the PlayStation controller. The only thing is, the reason why I don't recommend the PlayStation controller for PC is because some games just don't have, like, the best support with it on Steam. Whereas with the Microsoft Xbox controller, almost all the games have native button mappings to the Xbox controller scheme. Meaning the control scheme, you know, it'll say, like A for the green, B for the red, X for the blue, and yellow for the Y. Like that, and it'll have like the R1, RB, R or LB all that stuff, LT, RT, they'll have that. Whereas if you use PlayStation, if you're not familiar with PlayStation control scheme, you're going to be wondering, like, what is A? What is B? You know, A on PlayStation is actually X. B is circle. X is square. And Y is triangle. So you'll have to learn, like, the Sony PlayStation controller button mapping language. And it's different. So that's why I recommend the Xbox controller. Spider-Man takes advantage of DualSense. Yeah, but I don't think Spider-Man... You'd have to check. Spider-Man takes advantage of DualSense on PlayStation 5. I don't know if it takes advantage of it on PlayStation PC. So that's the thing. The DualSense is meant to be used with a PlayStation 5. So all the kind of fancy features that the developers put in the game to take advantage of DualSense, they really only work on PlayStation. They don't... I don't know if they actually work on the PC. Oh, they do? Okay, well then, I mean, that's... For that one game, that may be the case. But it's not going to be like that for the majority of games. Oh, wait a minute. Is this about to end? Oh, Spiral Abyss reset. I forgot to do floor 12. I ran out of time. I didn't do floor 12. Oops. I could probably just do that. I could do Spiral Abyss. I don't really like to do Spiral Abyss, but I guess I could do it. Except floor 12. Floor 12 is the one where it's like, I can clear it, but I can't get, like, all the stars on it. I just don't have good enough artifacts in this game to be able to finish. Well, it depends. It depends on what you... Well, actually, no, it doesn't depend. Like, I can't do full star on floor 12 with the current monsters that you have to fight. Oh, Sony... Oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, for that one game, that may be the case. But the vast majority of games are not Sony first-party titles. Some games you'll need Steam or separate drivers to emulate the controller or even use it for PlayStation on PC. Yeah, for a lot of older games. And the thing is, those older games will also lack the PlayStation button mapping. Meaning what you see on the screen will be like press A to interact with something. But the thing is, the PlayStation controller doesn't have an A button. It's actually the X button. That's what I'm saying. So all the like symbols on the controller will be different from the Xbox. And all PC games, they all generally default to the Xbox controller button mapping. Like if you pause the game and you go into like view the controls, it's gonna give you like a bunch of Xbox controls, even if you have a PlayStation controller plugged in. Now some games, they do actually support the PlayStation controller. Like a good example that I can give you is Rocket League. Like Rocket League is a game where it's like if you plug in a PlayStation controller, it'll automatically start showing you the PlayStation buttons. But if you're using an Xbox controller, it'll show you the Xbox ones automatically. So there's games that do a really good job with supporting a bunch of controllers. And then there's other ones that have no idea what a PlayStation controller is on the PC. Even though there is a PlayStation version of that game. So yeah, everything that Nero is saying is what I would agree with. Like in terms of my own experience trying to use like a DualShock 4 controller on PC. But like for me, the only game that I have to have a PlayStation controller to like actually enjoy playing the game would be like a fighting game, like Tekken 7. Like if I was gonna play Tekken 7, I cannot stand playing Tekken 7 on the Xbox controller. Like keyboard and mouse is completely out of the question. That's a joke, like for a fighting game. But I have to be using the PlayStation 4 controller for that. Or the fight stick. But it's like, I have a fight stick, but I haven't used it in so long. I used it for like Tekken Tag Tournament 2, like way back, like 10 years ago. And never really used it since. I think I used it like one time for Tekken 7, when Tekken 7 was brand new, and then I never really used it again. I went back to controller or playing on pad. Nintendo Pro. Wait, Nintendo? If the support is that bad for the DualSense, imagine for the Nintendo Pro controller. I've never bothered to try... Yeah, you know what? I've never actually tried to... I have the Nintendo Pro controller, but I've never tried using it with PC. The thing is, Nintendo Pro deals with being a generic controller better from what I know. Really? I remember the one for the Wii U. The Wii U Pro controller was terrible on PC. For most games. DualShock 4 layout is very disgusting when not supported. Yeah. It'll like map the like L2 and R2 to like X and Y or some nonsense. It kind of depends on the game. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. DualShock. Where is my DualShock? Oh, you know what? I don't even know where that one is. It's probably wherever the PS4 is, which is not over here. I still have the PS3 controller, though. Like, here's the DualShock 3. The DualShock 3 is over here. Yeah. I don't know why it's over here. I even have, like, this little, the chat thing, the little keyboard for the DualShock 3 for the PlayStation 3. So it's like, this thing can go, like, it sits on top of it. So it's like, here's the controller, and then here's like the keyboard up here for the PlayStation 3. This is PlayStation 3 though, so this doesn't even apply to what we're talking about. Touchpad does some witchery. Where is that thing? I don't know where my PlayStation 4 controller is. It's somewhere around. I don't know where it is though. There's an Xbox Series X controller over there. Like the Ryzen 9 7950X 3D. That one uses an Xbox Series. No, that one uses an Xbox One controller. So the one with the cross-shaped D-pad. And then I'm using my 360 controller on this PC. Even though I never had a 360. It's like, I have the 360 controller, but I never had the actual 360. Although, I've been thinking about the Xbox Series X, just because I kind of want to play those old games from, like, the 360 era. Just because the PS3 is so old now. The PS3 controller is the 6-axis... No, this one is the... No, this one is DualShock 3. It says DualShock 3 and 6-axis on it. So this is the one that has the rumble feature, the newer one. Yeah, it did. It did, but that was for like the very, very first set of PlayStation 3s. So that was for the one that could play the PS2 games. So it's like, hold on, where's the let me bring up, wait, I gotta move you guys over here again. Hold on, go to Wikipedia. PlayStation 3. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Hold on, where's the... Is this gonna work today? Okay. Okay, here we go. So the PlayStation 3. So yeah, the 6-axis controller launched with the original PlayStation 3. The one that could play the PS2 games natively. Hold on, what is this thing saying? Breath of the Wind, or whatever this thing is. Alright, we're done with this. I'm gonna close Genshin. So the original PlayStation 3 came out with the 6-axis controller, which was extremely lightweight. I have one somewhere. I don't know what the battery life on it is anymore because it's so old. But I told you guys the story, right? Like, I had a PlayStation 3, the original PlayStation 3, what everyone called the 60 gigabyte PlayStation 3. But it died. It died in 2014 while playing Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13 2013, it was the saddest moment in gaming history for me at the time, because I lost my Demon Souls Platinum save, my Dark Souls 1 Platinum save. I lost my White Knight Chronicles 1 save that had, like, I think I was like GR, I don't even remember what GR stands for in that game, but GR 15 or whatever, GR 19, whatever it was. Yeah, so it lived all the way to 2014 launch model. It died. It came with that 6-axis controller. So what I ended up doing to replace it was I ended up buying the Slim model. I bought a used, refurbished Slim model from GameStop. So for those that are not based in the U.S., if you don't know what GameStop is basically like, think of like the Micro Center. I think everybody's kind of familiar with what Micro Center is, even if you're not based in the U.S. GameStop is kind of like a Micro Center, but it's only for like video games and consoles, and like gaming peripherals and stuff, and that's kind of what they were. So I bought a used, secondhand, refurbished PlayStation 3 Slim. So it was the 2009 or 2010 model, so this middle one here, which was what I consider the good Slim one, because the last model, what they call the Super Slim, was a very, very cheap, like, it had like a little plastic sliding cover for the disc. It was just bad. Like, the quality of the last model compared to the launch model was night and day. But the Slim one that I ended up with was, I think, the best Slim one, because what a lot of people don't know is they actually cut corners on the Slim model over the years. So like the first one in 2009 and 10, I think mine is from 2010, but it had the chrome finish on the disc tray. It had all the LEDs, so it had the Wi-Fi LED, the hard drive LED, the power LED. It had the buttons that lit up, so the power button and the eject button actually had white LEDs on them. Later on, they got rid of that. They had the exact same like plastic case, but they made it piano black instead of chrome. And then they also the buttons no longer lit up, so they didn't have LEDs. They also had no more Wi-Fi LED. All they had was like a hard drive LED, if I remember correctly, on the later Slim model. And then after that one, then they came out with this like really, really cheapo Slim model that was not really that good. Didn't it have some Hall effect contraption on the analogs? I never actually had... So if you're talking about like controller analog drift, I never had that problem on any of my PS3 controllers. So this one that I'm showing right now, this is the one that came with the Slim. So this is why this is a DualShock 3. So this one has the vibration functionality in it, in addition to the 6-axis control scheme. But this is the one that I got with the refurbished Slim model. And the Slim model is actually on my desk right here, sitting right next to the PlayStation 5. So that allows me to play PlayStation 3 games, PS1 games, and some PS2 games, but they have to be like the downloaded digital one from the PSN. And then PlayStation 5 allows me to play PlayStation 4 games in backwards compatible mode and PlayStation 5 games. So with just a PS3 and a PS5, I have access to all of the PlayStation games from PlayStation 1 all the way to PlayStation 5. The only caveat is because I don't have my fat one anymore, or my original 60GB one, I can't play like PlayStation 2 games unless I have like the digital edition of them. So that's the only thing. Like, ideally, if you want access to all the PlayStation games, all you really need is one of these original launch models, which is probably going to become harder and harder to find as the years go by, because these eventually die from like the yellow light of death. That plus a PlayStation 5 gives you access to the entire Sony PlayStation library, because this model plays PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games, and then the PlayStation 5 plays PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games. They stripped even the... Yeah, so like this one, This is the one that I have today. So this is my refurb one that I bought after mine died. This one can play PlayStation 1 games and PlayStation 3 games. So like if I put a PlayStation 1 disc in this console, it will recognize the game and it'll play the game. But it cannot play PlayStation 2 games because they got rid of the emulation. Or not emulation, they got rid of the emotion engine. They actually got rid of the CPU from the PlayStation 2 that used to be in this one. So this one can do everything. However, there are newer ones that look like this that cannot do everything. So the easiest way to tell if you have a PlayStation that looks like this, and to know if it plays PlayStation 2 games natively, if it had 60 gigabytes and Wi-Fi, then it can. The other thing is if this silver-looking area around the disc tray, if this thing is chrome, shiny reflective chrome, that is a sign that it probably can play PlayStation 2 games with full native backwards compatibility. Also, this black thing right here, if this opens up and reveals 4 USB ports and a Memory Stick Pro Duo, an SD card reader, and a compact flash card reader, then it can definitely play PlayStation 2 games. If it cannot open, that means it cannot play PlayStation 2 games. And if it is a matte finish silver as opposed to a shiny reflective chrome, if it's a matte finish, it cannot play PlayStation 2 games. Yeah, so there's also a 20 gigabyte. The 20 gigabyte, I think it had like a black finish on it, and it did not have a Wi-Fi card inside. I wonder if there's like is there like a chart on here? So here's the thing. Oh no, that's the graphics. Stats regarding reliability. I still think the cross media bar was one of the best user interfaces for a video game console. Even to this day, I think the XMB was like one of the best ones ever. I want to see, is there like a... Then it also did have the whole like Life with PlayStation. It had that, what was that thing called? It's kind of like Second Life. PlayStation World, no, not PlayStation Now. PlayStation Home. Then it had like PlayStation Home. That was actually pretty cool. Yeah, that was... You know, I was thinking like a few days ago, the gaming industry from like 2008 to around 2015, I feel like that was when gaming was kind of at its peak in terms of the amount of innovation, the amount of like developers trying new styles, like just being very, very creative compared to today, where the state of gaming today is all about like rehashing old franchises, remastering old games for like 4K or whatever. Like think of like The Last of Us remaster, all these remasters. Obviously, like the Fatal Frame remaster that I played recently. Like a lot less of like new IP. PlayStation Home gaming using your whole body was huge back then. Oh, remember? Yeah, yeah, because that was the time of like, remember Project Natal? Project Natal, on which became Xbox Kinect, and then PlayStation Move, and then there was the whole like the industry had to go through that 3D phase. Remember the 3D? Remember the 3? We talked about this on a previous stream. The PlayStation had a 3D display. I actually have that display. I don't know where it is, but I had one. It's somewhere. Just like the PlayStation 4 controller and the PlayStation 4. I don't know where the PlayStation 4 is, but they're around somewhere. Kind of just walked off. So yeah, Dead Space was like 2008. Yeah. But like think about, I guess this article doesn't have what I was looking for. I was looking for like a chart that showed, or a table that showed all the different PS3 models. I guess it doesn't have it. That's unfortunate, because I really wanted to see like technical specifications. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is it. Okay, so Yeah, I remember having to look at these when I was looking for the Slim that I wanted. I wanted a Slim that had anything from CECH 2000 to CECH 2500, I think was good. And anything that was 3000, I avoided like the plague. When I was buying my used Slim, I made sure to avoid anything with a 30. Like, this is the one that you did not want, because this one lacked all the LEDs. It was cut down. It had that easy to scratch piano black finish. It was terrible. Like, you wanted one of these. If you wanted a Slim, you wanted the ones that had the higher power consumption, because they actually had all the LEDs. I think I ended up with a 120. It was either the 120 or it was the 160, but it was like a 25 serial number or something like that. And then my original one was this one. The one that died was the OG, first generation, 60 gigabyte. It can do it all, 90 nanometer GPU, and then it died. 380 watts. 380 watts. It was loud. It made a lot of noise, and I remember it expelling a lot of hot air into the room. And then when I got the Slim, I was kind of disappointed because I lost the ability to play PS2, but then when it was dead silent and it used like more than 150 watts less power, then I was like, okay, this is good. This is a good trade. Do you remember that tech Sony showcase where two players could play co-op games using only one screen? It used 3D to do it. Oh yeah, I don't even know what game that was. Was that like a Resistance Fall of Man type game or something? Like they were showing. Yeah, I remember it. The only game that I ever actually played in 3D with that display was Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was pretty fun in 3D. It's a fighting game, and it was a tag fighting game, so it was 2 versus 2. That was pretty fun in 3D. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had a lot of fun playing Tekken Tag in 3D. But there was not a lot of games that actually had proper support for it, though. Yeah, there it is. That's the original box. That was the original box. I remember that box. Because these, see how it's all chrome? It's all shiny chrome right there. That's how you know that's the one that can do it all. Actually, there were 80 gigabyte PS3s that looked just like this one, but they came in a different box and they could not play. Well, they could play PS2 games, but they lacked the emotion engine. All they had was the PS2 graphics synthesizer. So it's like, it shows right here. Here it is. So this is the original one. So it came with the cell. It came with that looks like a old Ryzen CPU, but anyway, this is the emotion engine and the graphics synthesizer, and this is the NVIDIA RSX right here. So like this cell was made by IBM. IBM made the processor. NVIDIA made the graphics processor. So NVIDIA made what's called the RSX, or the reality synthesizer, and then Sony had their own, whatever this thing is. And then this thing on the left is taken straight from the PlayStation 2. This is the Emotion Engine EE plus GS graphics synthesizer. So that is the PlayStation 2's CPU and its GPU on a PlayStation 3 motherboard. This is one that could do it all. Now, the other one, the one that looked almost like the... Oh, they don't have it. They don't show a picture of the motherboard. But essentially, there was a newer one that... This might be it. No, this looks like this is for the Slim. There was one that the Emotion Engine was gone, but they still had the graphics synthesizer. That was what was known as the 80 gigabyte PlayStation 3. It had the exact same chassis. So it looked just like this. And it was available in either a... what was it? MotorStorm. It came in a MotorStorm bundle or a Metal Gear Solid 4 bundle. That was the one. And it could play PS2 games, but it couldn't play all of them without issues because it only had the graphics processor and it had to use emulation for the CPU piece. That was known as the 80 gigabyte. That's I remember because that was the only other one. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. There was a 80 gigabyte in the North America region. I guess outside the European region. So NTSC 80 gigabyte. This is the one that had the NVIDIA. No, not NVIDIA. It had the PS2 graphics synthesizer, but it did not have the emotion engine. So see where it says software / hardware based PS2 compatibility, whereas these two actually have hardware based compatibility. And then after that, they got rid of it completely. There was a bunch of this third one here. These are the ones that look like this, except it's not piano black and it doesn't have chrome. It has like some cheap like matte finished plastic painted silver. For the third one, and then after that was the slim, and I ended up getting like a slim after mine died. And then there was the super slim, which was very, very cheap, but it, you know, doesn't use much power. The PS triple. The PS triple. I don't know if anybody remembers the whole Chad Warden. The Chad Warden memes. Back before memes were even memes. Back when YouTube was still kind of new. The Chad Warden and the PS triple. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but that's... Let's see. Well, that's the PlayStation 3. No, it was after it, I think. It was like during the time of like, yeah, I think the Chad Warden thing was around like this PlayStation 3. Maybe it was after the Metal Gear Solid, because the Metal Gear Solid 4 launch was like this the second one. This one. So that would have been like 2008. The Chad Warden thing I think was like 2008. Never had a PS3, had a PS4. Yeah, I got a PS4 like 2 years after it had been out. So the reason why I got a PS4 was to play Bloodborne. Bloodborne was the reason why I got one. Otherwise, like, there was no reason for me to get one. Trying to think, like, okay, I guess now would be a good time to bring out Paint. Oh, now I'm blinding myself. Okay. So, here we go. Where's Paint? There it is. Okay. Because I'm trying to think, like, what would be the games that... What would be the games that like, why would I get a PlayStation 4? I'm trying to remember. Besides Bloodborne, like, what did I play on PlayStation 4? Man, I need to save, you know what I need to do? I need to save, like, a Paint file that has this timeline thing, because we do this so many times on this stream. Like, I always end up drawing a timeline. Ended up playing a bunch of Destiny until Destiny 2 came out and ruined everything. Yeah, I never got into Destiny. I remember seeing the trailer for Destiny and thinking that that's gonna be amazing. Alright, hold on. We got, what, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, and then we'll do 2020. And I guess I should have made this longer. That's 2021, 22. So we're here now. And then 7, 6. Because this is where it started. Okay, we'll just go. I mean, I guess. Okay. We'll say 2006, because that's when the PlayStation 3 launched. 7, 08, 09, 10, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17. Now we're gonna do one of these for gaming and consoles. We've been doing this for like PC hardware, like almost every stream where it's not gaming focused, or it's not me just like playing a video game the whole time. Okay, so PS3 launched, but the thing is, like, what was around? Like, what would you actually play on it? Like, Ridge Racer 7, and then there was Resistance Fall of Man. Like, there was like nothing to play on this console besides like 2 games for like 2 years. Then MGS4 launches, and then I think Little Big Planet. This was an actual really good game when it came out. This was like a huge sleeper hit when it first came out. And then we also had Uncharted 2. I don't remember when Uncharted 1 came out. I think it was like, was it a launch title? Was Uncharted 1 a launch title? I don't think it was. Anyway, we got MGS4, Little Big Planet, Uncharted 2. There was another game that I was a big fan of called Valkyrie Chronicles. So 2008 had like a lot of actually good games that came out for the PlayStation 3. So, and look at that. That's like almost 2 years. There's like a 2-year gap between the launch and when you actually start seeing these consoles have a reason to be sold. So then in 2009 was notable for people who had PlayStation 3 because, well, it kind of depends on who you were, but I know in my case, this was the year that Demon's Souls came out on the PlayStation 3. What else was in this year? There was an Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2. Like, I remember that game, but that's just me. I remember putting a whole bunch of hours into that game. I can't really remember what else was in 2009 though. Oh, you know what? You're right. It's Valkyria Chronicles, not Valkyrie Chronicles. Yeah, good catch. Okay, so that's wrong. And now I messed it up. Valkyria Chronicles. Oh, Infamous. Yeah, Infamous. Infamous, though I'm not a big fan of Infamous. I played the demo, but I never actually got the game. But that was a big one in 2009. Yeah. So the point is, what I'm trying to illustrate here is that you start to notice that a console generation hits its stride a few years after the console's in the market. So meaning, if you're someone who wants to buy a console, it kind of pays dividends to wait it out. Unless you want to play the launch titles. Because really, the only ones that I can remember is Ridge Racer 7 and Resistance. Fall of Man. Like, those are like the 2 big ones. Oh, you know what was in 2009? Killzone 2. Killzone 2, the one that had that epic trailer back in 2006. The actual game then finally came out in 2009. So it took it like 3 years after it was revealed. Well, that was another big one in 2009. And that, I remember Killzone 2 looked really good. Infamous also looked really good. So, and Uncharted 2 looked really good. So did MGS4. So the point is, like, you started seeing a real reason to have one of these consoles. Because it was off to a kind of a slow start compared to the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 just, like, straight up came out with like a whole bunch of things within the first 12 months. And then you ended up with stuff like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy X. And that's why a lot of people say the PlayStation 2 era was the RPG era for consoles. It was like the golden days of, or the golden era of RPGs. But I don't really know if I agree with that, because the PlayStation 3 ended up having a lot of really good ones. Genji was a launch title too. Wasn't Lair? Was Lair? Does anyone remember that game? Lair? That dragon game? Was that a launch title? Genji, I think, was one also. Oh, the one game with the remember the woman with the long red hair? Sword dancing. What was that? I don't even know what that game was called. There was like a game with some character. It was like a first party title. I can't remember the name of the game. Heavenly Sword. Yeah, Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword was a good launch title. Nocturne. Yeah, if we want to do a timeline for PS2, like, someone's gonna help me, because I don't really remember the era that well. All I know is when I think PS2, I think Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy 12, the Xenosaga trilogy, and the Fatal Frame games. Fatal Frame 1 through 3. That's what I think of when I think of PS2. And then there's like a bunch of other RPGs, like Star Ocean Till the End of Time, and then some other stuff. Tales of Lingetia, you know, like... I guess it eventually got Resident Evil 4. And that reminds me, Resident Evil 5 was 2009? Was RE5 in this year? I don't know if it was 2009. Yeah, I think it was 2009. It was either 2009 or 2008. I can't remember which year was RE5. But then 2010 was Final Fantasy 13. Final Fantasy 13 finally shows up in 2010. Actually, in Japan, it was 2009. It was like the end of 2009. Oh, you know what was also in 2010? For those that are fans of Tekken? Tekken 9. But the thing is... Oh, Tekken 9. What am I talking about? Tekken 9. Tekken 6. Tekken 9. Tekken 6 was 2009. And then, if you wanted to play a Tekken game, I think in 2007, Tekken 5 DR. Tekken 5 DR was like 2007, I think, or somewhere around there. That was a fun game. I think I like Tekken 5 DR more than Tekken 6 myself. Oh, and you know what also was in 2009? There was more. I think Street Fighter... Devil May Cry 4 was 2008. Or maybe it was 2009. It was one of those 2 years. I forget. And then I think it was 2008 though. And then I can't remember when Street Fighter... Was it Street Fighter 4? Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter 5? One of them, because usually when there's a Tekken game, there's also a Street Fighter game. But I'm not a big Street Fighter person. I'm more like a Tekken person, so I don't really remember. I just know there was a Street Fighter... Oh yeah, Street Fighter 4. Okay. So it was 2008. Street Fighter 4. So, but see, you guys can see the big notable games, I guess the console generation defining games start coming out like 2 years, 3 years into the life cycle. Because I would say that Street Fighter 4 was kind of like your 2D fighter genre defining, or I guess console generation defining game. When you think back on the PlayStation 3 era, if you're a 2D fighter fan, you think of like Street Fighter 4. And if you're 3D fighter, then, you know, like Tekken 6 was the first like big Tekken game. Yeah, there was Tekken 5 DR, but Tekken 5 itself was a PlayStation 2 game from 2005. So you're starting to see like a lot of these really good games. So 2010 for me was notable because it had a game called White Knight Chronicles. I guess we'll just abbreviate because it's a super long one. White Knight Chronicles 1. That was a really good JRPG. Then there was Nier. The very first Nier. That's a sleeper hit. That was 2010. That was a really good game. Very, very underrated game. Kind of like a hidden gem, I'll say, of the PS3 era. Of course, Final Fantasy 13. Gran Turismo. I'm trying to remember when Gran Turismo. There was Gran Turismo 5 Prologue in 2008, but then I think the Gran Turismo 5 itself was 2010 or 2011. I can't remember exactly when that was, but it was somewhere around this time. For anyone who likes simulation racers, that would have been around like the 2010 era, I'm guessing, but I don't know for a fact, so I'm not going to put it on there. The PS3 debut really started when Sony released Uncharted. What year was Uncharted 1, though? Because Uncharted 2 was 2008, and that was like one of the best looking games on the console, right alongside Metal Gear Solid 4. Oh, was it GT Gran Turismo 5? Okay, it was 2010. Okay. Yeah. I was kind of thinking that, but I couldn't really remember. So GT5 was in 2010. Dance Dance Revolution also finally came to the PlayStation 3. Like, the newest DDR was in 2010, if I remember correctly. It might have been 2009, but I think it was 2010. Little Big Planet was another really big sleeper hit that got very popular when it came out. Yeah, the original Little Big Planet was in 2008. Uncharted 1 was in 2007. Man, that's really like a 1-year gap between the two of them. I mean, I guess it had to be because it wasn't a launch title. And remember, the console launched at the very end of 2006. It was like November 2006. So 2006 is basically like not even really a year for the console. It's like 2 months. So it was really like 2007 was the first year, 2008 was the second year, 2009 was the third year, and then so on. So it really started seeing a lot of stuff. And then 2011 had like, I'm just remembering like from my own collection, White Knight Chronicles 2, the game called Catherine. Because remember, everybody was waiting for like the next Persona game, but Persona 3 and Persona 4 were both on the PlayStation 2. Like, for some reason, Persona 4 came out on like the PlayStation 2 in like 2008. So instead, Atlas like published the game called Catherine, which is a puzzle game. This was another game that, in my opinion, this is one of those hidden gems of like the PS3 era. This, along with Nier and Demon Souls and Little Big Planet, these are kind of like the hidden, and Valkyria Chronicles. These are kind of like, in my opinion, when I think of PS3 games that really stood out, that were very, very different, Valkyria Chronicles stands out, Little Big Planet stands out, because yeah, a lot of people like to compare Little Big Planet to the Mario games, but it's like, it's not really like Mario. It has a different style, you know, it has like that pseudo, it's like layered, it's not really fully 3D, but it has like a foreground, middle ground, background. The multiplayer aspect is so seamless. The level creator was really, really cool. So Little Big Planet was a very, very good game. Catherine was a very good puzzle game. It even had multiplayer, it had co-op, and it had versus mode. And the story was actually really good too. Nier, of course, like this is now kind of like a cult classic. Demon Souls is also kind of like a cult classic. I mean, this was like the game that started it all in terms of the From Software success, although it was really riding on a game that we're about to mention. Persona 3 FES was on PS3. Yeah, but it's not like an original new game. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of... And it is the most complete version. Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, I guess the thing is, like, Persona 3 FES was like the... It's really the only real Persona game that the PS3 ended up getting. Even though it wasn't like a new story. Because the PS3 is unique in that it never got like a new... It never got a new Kingdom Hearts that wasn't like an original story. It only ended up getting like rehashes of PS2 era Kingdom Hearts games. Like Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Final Mix whatever. And then, you know, the 2.5 Final Mix So it got like remasters of PS2 games, and Persona 3 FES is kind of like that. It's kind of like a director's cut, Game of the Year edition sort of thing. That's kind of the way I see Persona 3 FES. So it's like it didn't really get any. It didn't get Kingdom Hearts. It didn't get Persona. What it did get instead is it got Nier instead of Kingdom Hearts, and then it got Catherine instead of Persona. That's kind of the way I always thought about it. Now reading here that it is the emulated version. Okay, so it's like a PS2 Classics then. Yeah, but I think one of the biggest games in 2011, Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls. That's the game that... I know this isn't a PlayStation 3 exclusive because you could play this on the Xbox 360, whereas Demon's Souls was an exclusive. But this is the one that really, started to propel From Software from being, this lesser-known developer to, who they are now. Of course, Skyrim. Skyrim was also 2011. You know how I remember that? Because the launch day was this. November 11th, 2011. That was Skyrim's launch day. That's why I'll never forget that. It's literally 11/11/11. That's why it's super easy to remember. And then Dark Souls, I remember because I actually went to the launch event at a GameStop to get my collector's edition for Dark Souls, and that was October 4th, I believe, 2011, I think, for that one. Because I remember a lot of people compared Dark Souls and Skyrim. I don't know why, but they compared these two games so often because they were so close to each other. It was almost like Dark Souls was the Ryzen 9 7950X, and then literally a month later, the 13900K shows up. So it's kind of like that. I don't know why I said that, but that's kind of what I think of. It's like the two games launched relatively close to each other, and then they were compared so often for some reason. A lot of people would do Dark Souls versus Skyrim. I don't know why they were doing Dark Souls versus Skyrim, because the games don't play alike at all. I guess, Skyrim's a big open world, but Dark Souls is an interconnected world, but it's not the same. I don't know, the control scheme is so different. I remember seeing posts of how bad Skyrim ran on the PS3. Yeah. Well, 30 FPS, but Dark Souls was bad on the PS3 too. Dark Souls was 30 FPS, and then remember the whole Blighttown memes? 11 to 18 FPS in Blighttown. So those are the big ones that I remember. And then I'm trying to think 2012. 2012 was well, I know it was Final Fantasy 13-2 was in 2012. So the sequel to the 13, because remember 13 ends up becoming a trilogy. And then what else was in that year? This is 2012. I know there was a lot actually, but I can't having trouble remembering. Blighttown 0.5 FPS. Man, what else was... Oh, you know what? No, not 2012. That wasn't 2012. I remember Final Fantasy was February of that year. Oh, Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur 5. Soul Calibur 5 was January of 2012. And I remember it was the most disappointing Soul Calibur game. In so many ways. Oh man, that one was just not good. Soul Calibur 5. What else? Was there a Killzone 3? I think there was a Killzone 3. And I think there was also another Resistance game. Or maybe Killzone 3 was PS4. God of War 3 in 2010. Oh, yeah. For some reason, I was thinking of the remake. the modern remake. But yeah, no, yeah, you're right. God of War 3, in 2010. Yeah, that was the first God of War game on the PlayStation 3 because God of War 1 and 2 were on PS2. Yeah, that's right. What? Oh, okay. Now I'm starting to remember. So the year was kind of slow, but like later on, Tekken Tag 2 was 2012. That was a big one. That was a really big one because this one ended up being my favorite fighting game of all time. Like this one. This is still my favorite fighting game. That was 2012. Yakuza, Dead Cells. Oh, did we forget about Dead Space? Dead Space was in 2008, if I remember correctly. Dead Space was in 2008. There was a bunch of Yakuza games. I don't remember. There was. I don't remember like when they all came out. I know there was one in like 2011. Dead Souls. That game flopped. There was a few other ones too. Oh, Tales of... What's that? What's the name? Tales of Graces. Graces F. Because the original Tales of Graces was on the Nintendo Wii. So Tales of Graces F was 2012. These are all in the wrong order. If we're going chronologically, Soul Calibur 5 is January. Final Fantasy 13-2 is February. Tales of Graces is like March. Tekken Tag 2 is like September. Or October of that year. So it's like way off. Sega didn't make nothing good. Well, poor Sega. Sega's the one who published this. Sega published Valkyria Chronicles. Sega made nothing good. Okay. Sega did make Phantasy Star Online Portable 2 on the PSP, but that doesn't count because we're talking about the PS3. Oh, there was also those like Metal Gear Solid. Remember Metal Gear Solid 3? Not Guns of the Patriots. That's 4. What am I thinking of? Like Sons of Liberty? No, that's not PSP. What am I thinking of? Patriot. I forgot the name of the one that's on the PSP. The Metal Gear Solid game was really good, but was on the PSP. The only franchise from them I still check is Yakuza. Hey, they have a pretty good. There's a pretty good spin-off called Lost Judgment. Lost Judgment is pretty good on the PS5. I have it on the PS5. I probably. Oh, Peace Walker. Yeah, Peace Walker. I need to finish Lost Judgment on the PS5. Tales of Graces. I'm trying to remember, like, what was the... Oh, I forgot. How can I put Tales of Graces and they completely forget about their rival? 2010 had Edge Maverick. Edge Maverick in Star Ocean 4. Star Ocean 4 The Last Hope, or Star Ocean The Last Hope. That was 2010. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that was 2010. Grace's F was 2010. It was that long ago? Because I know Vesperia. Remember Vesperia was an exclusive on the Xbox 360 in 2008. Oh, you're right, though. Grace's was on the Nintendo Wii in 2010. Then, I guess the PS3 one was also... I don't really remember, but I know 2012 was when we got it. I'm just thinking from my own memory of what happened in those years. Tekken Tag 2, DOA 5, like Dead or Alive 5 was also in 2012. But that series was just never as good as Tekken. 2013. 2013 was Final Fantasy 14. But it plays terribly on the PlayStation 3. Final Fantasy 14 came out originally, like, the 1.0 vanilla was on the Xbox 360, but the game, like, was so bad that they kept the servers alive because the diehard people kept paying the subscriptions. So then they revived the game as A Realm Reborn in 2013. So that game is gonna have its 10-year anniversary later this year. So, but yeah, it was on the PS3 and the PC, but of course the PS3 ran it like trash. But yeah, that was notable in 2013. I can't think, like, what else was in 2013? 2013 was GTA. Oh yeah, GTA 5. Yeah, how could I forget? Because that was like, because the PS3 and the 360 got GTA 5 before you could actually play it on PC or any of the newer consoles. Oh, the Tomb Raider. Oh yeah, now it's coming back to me. BioShock Infinite was 2013. We're gonna have to like move this down. But BioShock Infinite, of course, the other BioShock games, like I think the original BioShock was 2007 or 2008, and then BioShock 2 was like 2010, 11, somewhere in there. But BioShock Infinite is the one that I remember the best because it was no longer like an underwater Atlantis type place, and you were now like in the sky, and there was a blue sky. And it was like way more interesting. So that one, BioShock Infinite, GTA 5, The Last of Us. I'll just say Last of Us. Yeah. Tomb Raider reboot. That's right. Tomb Raider reboot. Yeah. The 2013 one. Yeah. So that one. Yeah, considering like how long running some of these games, like the GTA 5 in particular, and The Last of Us, how popular the series ended up becoming over the last decade, I would say, yeah, this is kind of like the peak. And the cool thing about it being the peak is this was also the year that the PlayStation 4 launched. PS4 enters. PS4 enters the chat. Like toward the end of 2013, alongside Xbox One. So now we get a new console. So now, I guess, now you'll start seeing where there's kind of this weird transition phase where you get games that launch on both consoles, and they usually run like trash on the old console. I think so. I can't remember the year, though. Well, Destiny was PS4 though, right? Or no, or was that Destiny 2? I think Destiny was PS4. Destiny, I think, did it run on PS3? And then Infamous 2 was also somewhere around like 2012. 2014, yeah. I was thinking, I think we're a little bit early for Destiny. Because 2014 was a big year from what I remember. For certain games, for certain genres. It was on PS3 as well. Okay. So it was kind of like Final Fantasy 14. It ran on there, but it ran like trash. It had that and that, yeah. So 2014 was kind of a big year. 2014 was Lightning Returns. I'll just say LR, FF13, because this was the last. This made it a trilogy, and I think this is like the only Final Fantasy franchise that is an actual trilogy. So, and this is the game that killed my PlayStation 3. My original launch model died in 2014 while I was playing that game. The other game that I played on it before it died was Dark Souls 2. So Dark Souls 2, Lightning Returns, Destiny. What else? I know there's more. There was a Tales of Exilia, or was that 2013? That might have been 2013. I don't know, because Graces was 12. Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs was on PS3? Oh yeah, I think it was. It would have to be. Watch Dogs. GTA 5 was 2013. Yeah, we got that. What am I forgetting? Tales of Exilia. Ninja Gaiden. Oh, you know what? I forgot. Ninja Gaiden 3 was on in this year. Ninja Gaiden 3 was in 2013. Alongside Dead or Alive 5. But this game was trash. This game was the worst Ninja Gaiden game. That they had to fix it, and then they released Ninja Gaiden 3. Wait, was it 2012? Oh, no. I have this mistaken. Ninja Gaiden was 2012. NG3 was 2012. Yeah, because it was so bad they had to re-release it as like Razor's Edge on the Nintendo Wii U. Because this is when the Wii U entered. Wii U enters. And Xbox One is here. In 2013. Goat Simulator. Goat Simulator was in the year. Assassin's Creed 3 was 2013. AC3. There was that weird. Remember there was that weird Devil May Cry made by some studio in I think the United Kingdom. It wasn't actually made by the team that made the Devil May Cry. It was the one that had that young Dante with black hair. That act like an edgelord. And I think it was like the worst. Well, it's not. The gameplay was okay, but it was like, this is just not Devil May Cry. The Devil May Cry reboot was 2013? Okay. The reboot. You like that one? I did not like. I just didn't like the characterization. It was just too different. Because my first Devil May Cry game was Devil May Cry 3 on the PS2. And the way Dante behaves in that game is just over the top hilarious. So going from that to 4 was okay. But then going from 4 to like the reboot was just like, no, this is who are these people and why am I playing this game? It just kind of felt like that. Devil May Cry. Yeah, so I think Tales of Exilia was probably 2013. I think I have that wrong for Tales of Exilia. You know what? I'm pretty sure that's wrong. Tales of Exilia 2 was 2014 or something like that. I think this was 2. I think this was Tales of Exilia. I might be wrong on these. There was no Star Ocean game. Yeah, there was only like one Star Ocean game. So, yeah. So the thing is, like, now we have the PS4. So now you're starting to run into a scenario where there's games that run really bad on the console. Like, Dark Souls 2 ran horribly. Well, it's weird. Dark Souls 1 had issues with, like, Blighttown and stuff. But Dark Souls 2, I remember Dark Souls 2 had terrible load times. The load times on the PS3 were awful. Just it was like a minute and 10 seconds just to teleport back to Majula. It was so bad. Like, they had fast travel, but it was... I'd rather walk, because the load times were so bad, I might as well just walk back and grind levels on the way. So, yeah, what I remember is this is kind of where it ends for me. For the PS3, this is where I draw the line. Because there's no more... Like, after this, in 2015, that's where I got a PS4. And the reason why I got a PS4, it was so that I could play Bloodborne on the PS4. Like, this came out in 2015... And that was kind of like the game that defined the PS4 era for me. And that's why I kind of made the switch at that point. So. Maybe that's part of the reason why people don't like Dark Souls 2. Well, see, Dark Souls 2, no. It's only a problem if you're playing it on PS3. Like the load times for Dark Souls 2 on PC and the newer consoles, it was fine. It was only on the PlayStation 3 where it was terrible. Q 10-minute load time for GTA 5. Well, I mean, even remember having to watch old Snake smoke like 3 cigarettes before you could get in to play the chapter in Metal Gear Solid 4? Remember that? And that was like, I guess if you installed the game, the PS3 was unique. Remember how the PS3 had games where you had to install? It had like, some of the games had mandatory installs, other games had optional installs. I think most of the time it was an optional install that could increase or improve the loading times. It would reduce it. I know Devil May Cry 4 had them. I just remember like a lot of fighting games, like not Guilty Gear. What was the other franchise? BlazBlue or BlazBlue. BlazBlue, I forgot. There was like a bunch of BlazBlue games that I forgot to list on this, but I remember there was like a whole bunch of them in the PS3 era. And then in PS4 era, they kind of went back to Guilty Gear. The 360 lived a bit longer, received Rise of the Tomb Raider in 2015, and then the AAA game stopped. Yeah. So it's like... Yeah, 2015. Because remember what I said, right? Like it always hits. It starts hitting its stride 2 years in, because see, like here is where you started seeing like a lot of console generation defining games show up. Like it just took a while to get there. And then here, you know, you have the same scenario happen again, where the console launches toward the end of 2013. But in 2015, you get all the genre-defining games. You get Bloodborne. You get Rise of the Tomb Raider. You get a lot of the stuff that went on the PS4 that actually ran decently on there, but it didn't really run good on the older console, or they just kind of started forgetting about the old console. And then in 2016, you know, the PS... That was like Dark Souls 3. Like DS3 was 2016, but that's PS4. So that's where it's like, you know, I'm pretty sure there were games that were available on PS3, but they were no longer like new exclusive games that were only on PS3 and they weren't on PS4, or they weren't multi-platform games. So by the time you get to like 2017, you know, this is the year where we got stuff like Tekken 7, Tales of Berseria. You start getting games that don't actually run on the PS3 anymore. So that's kind of the end of that. But, you know, Sony claims a 10-year lifespan. So that would mean that logically the last year was 2016. This is where, like, that's where it ends. The PS3 probably lived a bit longer in Japan, like the PS Vita. Yeah, probably. Yeah, because every time there's like an RPG, like a Tales game, it tends to also release on the older console. But I think that's kind of the reason why those games never really look as good as their competing games that don't have the older version. Although Final Fantasy 15 launched, I think, in 2016 or 15, and it was only available on PS4, but it ran horribly on PS4. In fact, you needed a PS4 Pro to actually get a decent experience in that game. And the PC version didn't even show up until like 2018. So yeah, but I think overall though, the PS3 had a very good run overall, and it was behind the Xbox 360 in terms of total units sold for a very long time. It eventually overtook the 360 globally, and then in North America, I think it eventually overtook the 360, probably because Microsoft stopped manufacturing the 360. And Sony kept making, like, those cheap PS3 Slims. So something like that was going on. But yeah, that's kind of the PS3 generation, or what I refer to as the 7th generation of consoles. Because of Halo. Yeah, there was a lot of Halo games too during that era. In fact, what didn't didn't the 360 have the most Halo games? Halo Reach, Halo ODST, Halo 3. The fact that you could also play Halo 2 backwards compatible on it. Uh, it had a lot of games from that franchise. People bought PS3 just to use it as a Blu-ray player too. Yeah, yeah. But when you think about these games, though, like, oh, you know what? I forgot to put the weird Suda51 games. There was a bunch of Suda51 games. I completely forgot, but I don't remember when they released. I know Shadows of the Damned was like 2011. Shadows of the Damned was let's just say Shadows. And then like Lollipop Chainsaw was 2012. I remember the Suda51 games because that was a thing. Like I feel like the PS3. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Killer is Dead. Oh yeah, Killer is Dead was on PS3 too, wasn't it? Or was that PS4? No, yeah, that was PS3. I forget when that one was though. Was that 2015? You're gonna have to look that one up for me to add it. 2013 Killers. What? They released one game every year. No More Heroes. Oh yeah, No More Heroes was originally on the Nintendo Wii, but it did get released on the PlayStation 3. I think it was 2010 for the PS Triple. Yeah, oh man, this list is getting really long. I guess that's crazy. You know, I guess what I should have done is Shadows of the Dam should be like down here. But yeah, like all the Suda51 games, Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, Killer is Dead, No More Heroes. The PS3 had like all those games. The other thing too was it also had that really weird game. It had Nier, but then it also had, I think it was in 2014? It had another game called Drakengard 3, which is called Dragoon in Japanese, in that version of the game. I think that was 2014 or 2013. I'm gonna say it was 2014. I'm pretty sure it was 2014. No, it might have actually been 2015. I can't remember actually. I think it might have been one of those two. I don't remember. But anyway. For Africa, released in 2008? I don't remember it. See, my thing is I have a harder time remembering the games from, like, this section. Because it wasn't really around until, like, 2009 was where I really started paying attention to the PS3. Because it was like 2 years in. It was like end of 2008, and then it's like, okay, now it's actually starting to have games. But I just now realized that, you know, like, I never really thought of that. Like, the Suda51 games, the Suda51, like, brand, Grasshopper Manufacture, all those, that development studio, they were very prolific in that era. They put out a game, like, every year. Almost every year, like, back to back. That's crazy. And it's like today, what's happening? Like nothing. But this goes back to what I was saying earlier, though. Like I feel like this era, the PS3 era, the 7th generation of consoles, was when game development was very prolific. It was very I don't want to say experimental because I feel like you'd have if you look at games from the 90s, and even the 80s. But more so the 90s, I think games were even more innovative and more like off the wall random compared to the way they are today. But I feel like after the PS3 era, games became very standardized, like franchises, remasters, mobile games, MOBA games, battle arenas, you know, like those type of Fortnite, like those type of genres took over. And like, it's weird because if you go throughout the PS3 era, the MMO genre was, at least the first part of it, the MMO genre was very, very big in like the 2000s decade. This was kind of like an MMO era. But then, like, sometime around, I think, if I had to divide gaming, like, I kind of think of it like this. Like, I would draw it kind of like this. Like, I would say this is kind of like the MMO era. And then we had this is like the League of Legends era. What do we call this? The MOBA era. And then, you know what we have, like, then we had like the era after the MOBA era was kind of the PUBG, Fortnite, the battle arena. I don't even know what you would battle arena. I don't know what this is. I just say battle arena, battle royale, but not battle arena, but battle royale. Like the battle royale genre. That's a terrible A, but you guys get what I'm saying. So it's like these were like, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I feel like this was where, like, if you weren't playing like the games that are listed on this chart, you were probably playing an MMO. If we're talking like 2000 to 2010, and if it was like, say, 2011 to 2017, if you weren't playing one of these type of games on this list, and if it wasn't like a shooter that I haven't listed, like a Halo or a Call of Duty, which we forgot to put Call of Duty on here, because 2008 was like COD 4. But anyway, you were probably playing a MOBA, like League of Legends, Dota 2, like those sort of games. And then like Battle Royale, like PUBG was like 2017 early access, and then Fortnite and all that stuff. So it's like, now it's kind of like those three genres are kind of like the big ones that kind of gobble up like the gaming market if they're not like playing one of these other type of games. Starting 2012, smartphones got powerful, so developers started targeting. Yeah, and that was what I was gonna say next. Was I'm not gonna leave the MOBA MMO stuff on here, but what I was gonna say was mobile games started picking up around kind of like this time frame. Was kind of when phones got really good, where you could actually run games, not really high fidelity graphics or anything, but you could run like those gacha games and those mobile games. They all started cropping up, and that business model, the loot box business model, really started taking off in this era, and then just kind of like propelled itself forward. And that's kind of where we are today, where I feel like the reason why we don't see a lot of like unique type of games that are really, you know, genre defining or unique is because of mobile games. Like I think mobile games and loot boxes and gacha and those type of business models have kind of made the gaming market kind of stagnate in a bad way. So that's kind of why, like, when I look back on the olden days of gaming, like, I think that it was better in the past than the way it is now. It's not like it's terrible now. It's just not as interesting. Every now and then you'll get some unique game that's, that tries to do something different. It's kind of like Fall Guys. Fall Guys was kind of a unique game that was popular for a while. What was another one? There was one that I was thinking of earlier, and I forgot what it was. I mean, Genshin Impact, but that's just a gacha game. But that's actually a pretty good game, though, in terms of the gameplay. But again, that that game still falls into the category of a live service, free-to-play game that has like an in-game shop. Plus a gacha mechanic. So that's kind of like the worst of both worlds. Among Us, that game exploded back into 2020. Yeah, there's some of them. Like, there's that one game, right? Sons of the Forest in early access recently. There was another one too in what was the one where it's like you're in like some kind of dungeon and you can play as either a warrior, a wizard, and there's like two other, like an archer and some other like priest or something. It was in early access back in like January, and then they took it offline for, I guess, to continue the development. Gauntlet, yeah, Gauntlet. See, that's what I mean by, like, every now and then there'll be this game that looks very promising and it's interesting and unique, and there's not really anything else currently that is similar to it. But it's not like it was in the past where you had like a bunch of that, like especially in like if we go further back, like the PS1 and the PS2 era had way more of that kind of innovation. Now, the only limiting factor back then was obviously the hardware was not as strong as it is now. And then also, if we're talking PS1, the internet was not as fast, and not that many people had internet in the 90s. And that was the reason why, like, there were innovative games like Gauntlet, and Among Us and Fall Guys, but like not as many. They weren't as easily discoverable, so they kind of existed in these small little pockets, in these different areas. And then with the internet, so like the PS2 era, PS2 didn't really have internet either. Obviously later on it did. The Slim had the Ethernet port. You could buy the modem thing, but like very few people ever actually did that with the PS2. I think really the only game that I could think of that justified having online connectivity was Final Fantasy XI on the PS2, and maybe some of the sports games for multiplayer and that sort of thing. But realistically, like, there was a lot of unique and innovative game design in the PS2 era. It's just like I can only imagine, like, if the gaming industry started with the PS3 era instead of the PS1 era, I think we'd be in a different spot. SOCOM. Yeah, online games were more on GameCube and Dreamcast. I'd rather start on those. Yeah, and the original Xbox. Well, it's because the original Xbox... I know the original Xbox had the Ethernet port built in. I don't remember if the GameCube had it, though. Oh, yeah, SOCOM. Yeah, the original SOCOM, yeah. Yeah, I remember, like... There's even people that were trying to get that to still run on private servers. I don't think it's the original SOCOM, though. I forget which one I'm thinking of. SOCOM 3? GameCube had some kind of... well, no, Dreamcast had PSO. I guess GameCube got PSO? Yeah, there was some kind of way to get internet connectivity on the GameCube. The only console in the 6th generation that natively had online functionality built in was the Xbox. I think all the Japanese consoles, you had to get like some kind of add-on. Like the PS2 Slim added the Ethernet port, but the original one didn't have it. You had to buy like this huge thing to attach into the expansion bay. And then the GameCube, I don't even remember like what that had to get connectivity, or what you had to connect to it to get internet connectivity. And then the Dreamcast, I never had a Dreamcast, so I don't even know like what that used. I just know that like one of my friends back then, he did play Phantasy Star online, and he had the little thing that connected on the back. I don't know what it was though. Like I don't know what it was called. Yeah. But like the that's the thing, like the think about like the amount of different kind of games that came out in the PS1 era and the PS2 era. Like the PS1 had like Xenogears, the PS2 had the Xenosaga trilogy, the PS2 had, you know, Final Fantasy X, Kingdom Hearts, SOCOM, a Tekken Tag Tournament, you know, Tekken 5, Soul Calibur 2, the Fatal Frame 1, 2, and 3, Persona 3, Persona 4. Like, the PS2 had, like, so many good games. Final Fantasy 12, like... What I remember about the PS2 is the PS2 and the Xbox and the GameCube, all the games that were multi-platform, all ran relatively similar on no matter what console you had. Now, I know the Xbox had the fastest load times because it was using a hard drive. The others were using the disc. But the Xbox had the disc, but then it would like, you know, it was the first console that allowed it to install some of the stuff for caching onto the hard drive as using like a paging file system. So that's why the Xbox had the fastest load times. It also had the best hardware spec-wise. Dreamcast used an old school modem that tapped into your phone line. Oh, okay. So the Dreamcast was the only one that couldn't actually do like real broadband. Man, that's crazy. That is old school. Yeah, I often forget about the Dreamcast, but yeah, the Dreamcast is considered 6th generation. It was the first one. So first it was Dreamcast, then PlayStation, then GameCube, and then Xbox, or was it Xbox and GameCube? I always get the last two mixed up. I think it depends on where you were in the world, because I think in North America, I think the Xbox might have launched a few months before the GameCube, but everywhere else, I think the GameCube was first. I can't remember between those two. Yeah, Xbox was a good console. Like, the Xbox was... In fact, when it comes to Microsoft consoles, I only have an Xbox original. I don't have an Xbox 360. I never had an Xbox One or a One X. I don't have the Series X or S. I only have the original Xbox. It was pretty much a wash with regards to hardware, and the software of the era is legendary. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like the 6th generation, what I remember is the games, any game that was multi-platform. Like, the best example I can give you guys is Soul Calibur 2. Soul Calibur 2 had Heihachi from Tekken on the PS2. It had Link from The Legend of Zelda on the GameCube, and it had Spawn from Todd McFarlane's Spawn series on the Xbox. I remember like seeing all three consoles side by side. GameCube was in the middle, Xbox was on the right, PS2 was on the left, and then I remember me and my friends were trying to like test the load time, like who's the fastest. Xbox was always the fastest. GameCube was second. PS2 was always the third place slowest of the bunch. And then we would also try to look at the graphics quality. Xbox, actually, the game did look best on Xbox. You know, but the thing is, they were still so relatively similar at the end of the day that it wasn't like, if you're not playing on Xbox, this game is trash. It wasn't like that at all. You know, where nowadays it's like for some reason the game gets super over optimized for PS5, but then like Xbox Series X is always slightly behind, and then PC always gets like the sloppy seconds unoptimized mess. so that's, even though the PC can be like way more powerful than the PS5, and yet it still has stutter struggle. Like yeah, hardware-wise, it's faster than PS5, but when it comes to the game performance, not really. it's one of those things where it's like, why is PS5 always overtuned, optimized through the roof, and then like everything else is not? I mean, Series X runs games fine, and it's not noticeably worse than PS5. But what I'm saying is, like, in the olden days, if you had a PS2 and an Xbox or a GameCube, like, you were still getting the same experience. The only difference was, like, the load times were slightly faster on one console over the other, and that was pretty much it. And then maybe, depending on the game, the graphics quality might be a little bit better looking. But, you know, we're talking like 480i. 480i in those days. So, although the original Xbox could actually do 720p for some games. It was rare, but it could actually support. I remember the Xbox original supported component cable output. So the actual RGB, so the red, green, blue, like the actual component cables, not composite, the component cables, it could do component cable output at 720p. The Xbox original was the only one that could actually do that properly. The other two couldn't do it. I think the GameCube had a component video option, but it was just like 480p. It could do 480p, but it couldn't do like 720p. And maybe the PS2 could do the same thing. I just know the Xbox was the only one that could actually do 720p back in like 2005. What games aren't optimized? Wasn't the Series X designed to be a server chip for xCloud oversimplification and the PS5 more gaming optimized? You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it, because I really don't think that Microsoft would want a chip that is meant for a cloud server to be in people's homes as a client device. So I don't know how accurate that statement is at all. AMD usually shares a portion of the design for both Sony and Microsoft consoles. I think the thing that's similar between them is the shaders. So the shader array is similar. They're both the same, like, graphics generation. They're both RDNA 2. But other than that, like, the thing, I think a lot of things that people don't think about is the fact that when it comes to manufacturing for the consoles, AMD is not the one who actually buys and manufactures these chips. It's Microsoft and Sony that are buying these chips. Like, AMD made the designs for them, but if you take a PlayStation 5 and you disassemble a PlayStation 5 all the way down to look at the actual SoC, that thing is not going to have an AMD logo on it anywhere. It's going to have a Sony Corporation logo on that system on a chip die. That's RDNA 2 based. That's Zen 2 based. But it's not going to have an AMD logo on it anywhere. AMD did design the hardware, but it is Sony's product. And likewise, the Xbox Series X and S have Microsoft Corporation logos on the die. Why is it Zen 2? Because that's what existed when they were developing it. See, a lot of people seem to forget that when hardware is designed, it's designed to exist in the market. A product like a console is meant to have a specific life cycle. The RDNA 2 was around. It just wasn't in the public market. Just because a product launches at a certain time doesn't mean that generation hardware didn't exist in previous years. It just was never released to market. So, like, RDNA 2 has been around since, like, 2018. That was when it was being designed. So it's one thing to be able to design something years before you can actually realize its physical existence. It's another thing to have the manufacturing capability. So there's a couple of things there. So with it being Zen 2 based and RDNA 2 based, they basically took the Zen 2 architecture that they had at the time, and they developed it for a console to fit within, like what Tony was saying, to fit in a specific power envelope. And then the same thing with RDNA 2. RDNA 2 is a newer edition of RDNA 1. Well, remember, RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 released within a year and a half of each other. You guys remember the timeline? RDNA 1, July 7th, or we'll just say 2019. RX 5700 XT was a summer 2019 product. Well, what about this? This was 2020. This was fall 2020. So it's literally a year and a few months between RDNA 1 and RDNA 2. When did when did PS5 come out? And Xbox? Oh, series. You know what? There. These came out 2020. When did Zen 2 come out? Do you remember? Zen 2 launched with RDNA 1 in 2019. So these products are very similar to each other in when they released. The design of the Series X is quite good, in my opinion. Imagine a PC that small but as powerful as a Series X. Yeah, and I kind of want a Series X. Like I said it before, like if I was gonna get a console this year, it'll be a Series X. I'm hoping for some kind of like price drop in the second half of the year. I want to see it like go to like $399, or maybe even just like $450. I might get one because I kind of want a Series X because I want to be able to play like a lot of these old games that you guys see here from the PS3 era. I want a Series X not because of the current new games, but because I want to be able to play like my old games upscaled to 4K using backwards compatible mode. So that's kind of why I want one. And I have a lot of old Xbox original games that I would be able to play on it again. And be able to upscale them to, you know, like 4K. So, benchmark Steam Deck? Wait, the problem with the Series X design is that it has a split memory pool with 10 gigabytes at 560 gigabytes of bandwidth and 6 gigabytes at 336 gigabytes of bandwidth with the underclocked GPU at 1.8. Yeah, but in the real world performance though, it's not really that bad. It's not like it's significantly worse. I feel like in terms of how it compares with PlayStation 5, it's kind of a wash. In some games, it's faster than the PlayStation 5. In others, it's slower. But they're so similar, it's not like there's any significant difference. There are always those edge case games, though. I think you can emulate on Series X using dev mode as well. Yeah, I want to be able to play like my old Xbox original games on the Series X, as well as some like 7th generation games that like I would have to play them on PS3, and it's like I'd rather play them on a Series X than a PS3. Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like it's got more shaders, it's got more compute units and more shaders that run slower versus like less that run faster. So it's, in my mind, it's kind of a wash between the two of them in terms of the graphics potential. Yeah, they're at the end of the day they're so similar it doesn't really matter. I just want one because I want to be able to play older games on it. I can't really do that with the PS5. But yeah, we were talking about the PlayStation 3 era. We're talking about 7th generation. And then I guess we kind of skipped 8th generation. And then we just went straight to talking about, like, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. You can run Xbox games emulated on your PC, though. How? I've never heard... I mean, I guess you could do that, but I've only heard of, like, PlayStation 3 emulator. I've never heard of, like, Xbox emulator. Like, how does that work? RPC, yeah, there's like a lot, I don't know, that RPCS3 is kind of like, yeah, no, it's, they have 360 and OG Xbox. See, I really just need OG Xbox emulation. I don't have any 360 games. Like, I only have Xbox original games. Like the original Ninja Gaiden, like Ninja Gaiden Black, Gun Valkyrie. There's like a couple of old games, Jade Empire. Like there's stuff that I would like to go back and revisit on occasion. Like the Soul Calibur 2 on Xbox, the one that has Spawn in it. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the hardware prices too. Oh, you're talking about... so wait, are you talking about Xbox games emulated on PC, or are you talking about Xbox Series X backwards compatibility emulation of the old games? Yeah, but Nero, a budget PC at $600 is not going to run games as well as a $600 console. It won't run the games as good, and it won't load the games as fast as the console. You missed some of these games, sadly. Yeah. Series X is $500. Yeah, it's $500. So is the PlayStation. Yeah, like they're still really expensive. I kind of want. I'm just hoping that the Series X will go down by like $50 to $100 later this year. The thing with the PS3 emulation is the performance is so random. Like some games will be fine, but especially if you're trying one of those like old RPGs that the way that the Japanese developers made the game were so like big brain, non-conventional, off the wall, random. The way they programmed it was all the reverse of everyone else's way of doing things. Like those sort of games do not run good on RPC at all. Doesn't matter what CPU you have. They just don't work. Or they crash, or they have bugs, you know, like emulation on PC is a good idea, but in practice it just never really. Sometimes it can be amazing. Like the Dolphin emulator is pretty good. But you know, like when you try to run specific games, like I don't know, like it's not a good idea. Or it's just not a good experience. And there's just too many hoops you gotta jump through. To the point where it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe that Xbox Series X doesn't seem so bad after all. So did I look at the price? Yeah, we can look at it here. Or the specs. Let's look at it. The Last of Us. Last of Us recommended specs. Okay, here we go. Wait, hold on. Let me find the... Wait, is this it? Okay, here we go. Available March 28th. PC specs for The Last of Us Part 1. Minimum. Okay, here's what they consider minimum. 30 FPS. 30 FPS at 720p. Low preset settings. Low preset settings. 720. Look at this. 720p, 30 FPS. What does this sound like? What does this sound like? Oh, I don't know. It sounds a lot like one of these. It sounds a lot like how the games on this thing used to play. We were just talking about that. 30 FPS at 720p at low settings. Minimum spec. AMD Ryzen 1500X. Or Intel Core i7. Oh wow, my old Intel Haswell i7 manages to make the minimum requirement list or the minimum spec list for this game. Oh wow, that means if I never upgraded my PC from all those years ago, from like 10 years ago, well actually almost 10 years ago, because June of 2013 was when I built the 4770K. That was when it launched. Yeah, I mean, okay, minimum. AMD Radeon RX 470, 4 gigabyte. Okay, what does that sound like? That's a GPU that everybody should know. That is, hold on. I'm gonna put it down here so everybody knows. RX 470 equals PS4 Pro. You need a PS4 Pro to be able to do 720p 30 in this game. GTX 970. Yeah, GTX 970. But yeah, I was gonna say I'm comparing it to consoles because the theme of this stream is like consoles for some reason. I don't know. It's like Marcelo was saying. We're supposed to talk about price of computer hardware, but we started talking about consoles instead. So, oh yeah, GTX 970 is right there. GTX 970. GeForce 1050 Ti, is that correct? That's wrong. That's just straight up wrong. A 1050 Ti is not equal to a 970. A 1050 Ti is equal to like a 960. That is super wrong. This should say GeForce 1060, not 1050 Ti. That's complete garbage lie by the developer. And then RX 6500 XT. Okay, yeah, that is what it is. And then 16 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. This should be 1060 right here, not 1050 Ti. That's a lie. That's straight up lying. This is known as setting incorrect expectations, because you know what's going to happen? A lot of people who have laptops, yes, laptops. A lot of people who have laptops with 1050 Ti's in them are going to look at this like, oh, I'm good. I just have to run the game at 720p. Well, they're not going to be averaging 30 FPS. And it may or may not be because they have a 1050 Ti. It might also be because they're on a laptop. But that's a whole nother story. So 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's gonna... Anytime I see 16 gigabytes of RAM listed as a minimum spec, that is a red flag for Stutter City. Stutter Struggle. Stutter Fest. Whatever you want to call it. That 16 gigs of RAM, this game is going to stutter. I was going to make a rhyme. I was going to say stutter like butter, but that's not actually what that is. So anyway, Windows 10, 64-bit version, yeah, whatever. Okay, 100 gigabytes. This game takes as much space as Forspoken. There you go, folks. 100 gigs SSD minimum. Notice that they say SSD is on the minimum, which means hard drives aren't even allowed. Like, anyone who's still on a hard drive, or they don't have enough SSD space on their boot drive to fit this game, they need not apply. They basically are telling you, if you don't have an SSD, do not buy our game. Please don't give us your money if you have a hard drive. If you use a hard drive for your video games. They changed the ultra requirements. The original post had a with FSR instead of the XTX. Oh, they actually upped the requirement. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right, so that's the minimum. So with these specs, from like a 10-year-old PC, you're looking at the 720p 30 FPS PlayStation 3 experience. Recommended for 1080 60 FPS at high settings. This is a massive step up over minimum. So AMD Ryzen 5 3600. So the classic 3600 and the classic i7 8700. That a lot of people still have those two CPUs. So the RDNA 1 5700 XT or the 6600 XT RDNA 2, they both have 8 gigabytes. So that's pretty standard. And then the NVIDIA 2070 Super. So that's kind of similar to the 5700 XT. And then the 3060, yeah, and that's kind of similar to this one. So that makes sense. The 16 gigabytes of RAM, though, is still going to stutter a lot, even with these specs. I'm pretty sure that 16 gigs... If Hogwarts Legacy has taught me anything, it basically taught me that you don't want to be playing modern games in 2023 with 16 gigabytes of system RAM. Windows 10, and okay. You tested Returnal on Arc and run 1440 high with high RT at above. Okay. Yeah, because Returnal is... I'm thinking of Control. So I was still thinking of a different game. But yeah, Returnal came from the console. Who has a 3060 with a 128-bit bus and 8 gigs of VRAM? You're asking me who has a 3060? A lot of people. A lot of people that were dumb enough to buy one. Or they didn't have any other choice. Or they have... Or what's more likely to be the case is they have a laptop. See, what's going on is they have a laptop. They've got a laptop 3060, which has 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's probably what it is. I don't think the laptop ones have 12. It's probably talking about the laptop. All these stealth launched, they're all in laptops, guys. So the thing is, those Steam, and every time you go look at those Steam survey hardware results, that has so many laptops and internet cafes from China that are literally thrown in there, and that's the reason why those numbers are the way they are. Yeah, the recent ones from the second half of last year till now only have 6 gigabytes of RAM. But I think the older ones had 8. Performance. So this is 1440p. I don't know how I feel about, they say minimum recommended performance ultra. But the thing is, it's like, okay, what if somebody wants to do ultra at 1080p or ultra settings at 1440p? This is... I understand why they're doing this, to kind of categorize this in a way that they can kind of say, okay, if you have this kind of hardware, you should have, be able to do this kind of resolution at that frame rate. It just looks kind of weird. So for the performance tier, they're saying you need to have a Ryzen 5 5600X. So basically a Zen 3 Ryzen 5 or an Intel or 9th gen i7. So those CPUs are kind of similar, but the Intel one is worse. The 9700K is really not that different from an 8700K. So the Intel i9 9th gen is more like a Zen 2 processor than a Zen 3 processor. So that's kind of misleading. I would have rather them say 11 700K, because I think 11th gen is more similar to the Ryzen 5, and it's also more similar to it in terms of when it released. So that's kind of weird. Maybe 10th gen also would be fine, but like, yeah, this is kind of... I don't really know how I feel about that. But this tells me that either the game is not really that CPU heavy, because they're literally saying like a 6-core 12-thread or an 8-core 8-thread, because this i7 is a stupid i7 that doesn't actually have hyperthreading, because for some reason, like, this is the famous thing, this is like the cool thing about, or I guess the uncool thing about the 9700K, is that it actually has no hyperthreading, even though it's i7, and last I checked, i7s are supposed to have hyperthreading. So this is an 8-core that only does 8 threads. So, but anyway, the GPU is the 6750 XT, okay, and the 2080 Ti. Yeah, those are about the same, so that makes sense. And then the RAM, that's good. So, and yeah, okay. So this is believable overall, though. The only thing on this list is the Intel CPU is kind of weak compared to everything else listed here, but it'll probably be fine. Yeah, the 10700K should be here, not the 9700K. That's dumb. And then Ultra, we have 4K 60. So you need, again, oh, that's interesting. They're saying you need a 12-core, 24-thread, or a 6 plus 4, so that's 12 plus 4. So you need like a 16-thread Intel. Wait, is that 16 thread? Yeah, because this is 6, which does hyperthread, so that's 12 threads plus 4 E-cores, so you're at 16 thread. So a 16 thread roughly, or I guess on the AMD you have a 24 thread because it's 12 plus hyperthread or SMT, so it's 24. So yeah, basically you need one of these two, which is kind of strange. So I honestly don't know like how important the CPU is gonna be in this game. This is a single player game, but you know, Hogwarts Legacy taught us, if Hogsmeade was anything to go by, it taught us that yeah, the CPU does actually kind of matter. So Radeon 7900 XTX or the GeForce RTX 4080, those two are about the same. So yeah. And then 32 gigabytes. So the Ultra makes sense. The performance makes sense. These two, I guess, they make sense. Although I don't think anybody who has what's listed in minimum should even bother. Like, and then I think recommended looks like it's laptop specs, especially those GPUs that they're listing for Nvidia, because you're not gonna find like these AMD GPUs in a laptop. I think there are some... Well, see, the thing is with AMD, like, the laptops, the few laptops that actually have Radeon graphics are, like, 6800M, 6700M. They actually have, like, the mobile designation next to the SKU, which I really wish NVIDIA would do the same thing. I really don't like how NVIDIA, like, stopped saying, you know, like, RTX 3060M. You know, like, why can't they just say 3060M? Like, mobile, so we know that it's in a laptop. Right. But at least you know it's mobile. So you know that it's going to have a far lower power limit compared to the desktop equivalent. Because that's the problem with the Nvidia GPUs. Like, people there's a lot of people that will go and look at, like, benchmarks, and they'll see like, oh, this 3060 is amazing. Then they'll go buy a laptop with a 3060 in it, and they'll be like, why doesn't it perform anywhere near as what it showed in the video from Jay's 2 cents? He's a liar. Even though, you know, they don't realize that they bought a laptop and that's not going to perform the same as a desktop. Even though it said on the thing at Best Buy, RTX 3060 in this Asus laptop. Hopefully next month we will see more full AMD laptops. Yeah, the AMD laptops are pretty impressive. Honestly, I didn't think that they were going to be as good as they are showing them to be. I knew they were going to be really, really good on battery life, because AMD has been better than Intel at battery life for a very long time now. And what's funny is, or what's kind of ironic is, Intel actually had better battery life when they didn't have E-cores in laptops. I think the E-cores don't really help them that much. Maybe it does, but it's just compared to AMD, it's just not as good at battery life. So, but that's coming from somebody like me that cares about battery life if I'm using a mobile device. I'm not going to use a mobile device for gaming. Right? Like, we've had this discussion before. I've shown what a real, actual laptop is, not some clickbait gamer laptop, which is a huge scam, in my opinion. So, yeah, like this. So, you know what I will say about the Ultra specs for a lot of these games that have come out in 2023 so far? I do think they're pretty accurate when it comes to the 4K 60 Ultra spec. For Horizon. Forspoken was kind of like that. Hogwarts was kind of accurate with their claims. This is probably no different, I would guess. So, yeah, this will be interesting. You know, like, this is going to be on Steam and Epic Games Store. I think this one's probably going to do pretty well. Like, so far it seems like the Sony, like the games that were PlayStation exclusive that are moving over to PC, they've had pretty smooth launches. Like Horizon Zero Dawn was pretty good. The Spider-Man games have been really good on PC. So it's, yeah, these first party titles that are coming over are actually pretty decent ports. So that's good, but I think these specs for Ultra do show that we are now living in an era where 4K 60 is obtainable, although it is an expensive way to get that experience. You have to essentially buy, a $1,000 GPU, and in a lot of cases you have to pay more than that if we're talking like 4080 in particular. But even like a good AIB card for the XTX is probably going to be like $1,100. So you have to pay a lot to get a 4K 60 FPS Ultra experience when it comes to games. And this leads me into our segue talking about the price of hardware. Because I don't know how much of it is corporate greed and inflation, or how much of it is inflation versus like companies just wanting to increase profits. But I think there's a little bit of both. You need a new laptop to replace the current Intel-based workstation. This game is being bundled with RDNA 2 GPUs too, I think. Oh, is it? I was gonna look at this to see if they have it on here. But I don't know if they have that. Well, I don't see it. Get the game. What's the game? Oh, it is. Yeah. You get it free with an AMD. Wow. Okay. So, hold on. Is it for like all of them? That's cool. Is it only RDNA 2 though? Like, let me go back to that product page. Is this specific to... No. This is like an AMD promotion page. Hey, if I get a 6500 XT, do I get it for free with my 6500 XT? What? Wait, you can get The Last of Us? You can get The Last of Us with a $150 6500 XT? Is this a joke? Is this real? What? You can get... Whoa! Wait a minute. For real? Hold on a second. Wait. 6400? Oh, what? Wait, why is this the same amount of money? This is so much worse. Why is this... Well, I like how Power Color just makes these look like reference cards. The Sapphire Nitro is $700 on Newegg. Wait a minute, for real? Whoa, like, okay, there's the Merc. The Merc is 700. This is 6950. Oh, they're saying the Nitro. This one is probably like one of the nicest looking ones though, like because this one, the XFX from the RDNA 2 generation, like the cool thing about this GPU was the lights. Like this one actually had the Radeon logo lights up, the like 6950 XT, the XFX logo, all that stuff lights up white by default, which is the way I would actually run it. I don't want the vomit RGB going all over the place like constantly. I'd rather it just be white LEDs. And then it has like the RX is like red. That's the only thing. But it's like it's so subtle. It's like I'd probably just leave it on the stock settings and just never bother to change the RGB. That one actually is. See, I really think that the XFX Merc from RDNA 2 is better than the RDNA 3 one, because the RDNA 3 one doesn't have all the lights. It only has the XFX logo. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Marcel. I think that the Merc is one of the nicest looking. The RDNA 2 Merc is one of the nicest looking AIB cards, just in general. Is EVGA's 2060 KO a good deal? No. No. I mean, it depends on how much it costs, but probably no. Only for around $200, and if it's the 12 gigabyte version. Hold on. How close is that to like an Intel A750 though? Because an A750 is like a 5700 XT or X or like a 5700, and a 2060 is also kind of like a 50. So I guess it's kind of like the Intel GPU. I'd rather get the Intel. Well, this thing has if you can get the 12 gigs, but I don't know. Like 2060 is so old. Keep in mind, software, that 2060 is 2018. You're talking 2018 technology. It's gonna be 5 years old in like a few months, like in August. Well, a few months, it's a while, but still, that's I don't know about that. Like, they had a deal on Newegg. Honestly, like if you're looking in that price range, at that. So $200? Oh, that's what Met Prism was saying. Like, I would say this, or maybe this one, 6700 XT or the 6750 XT. Well, that's like 380, but I guess like this. Plus, you get The Last of Us. Was it like the for 1080p? For 1080p 60, you basically need like a 3060 or a... Wait, I thought I saw the... Wasn't the 2060 Super on one of these? Oh no, never mind. It was the 2070 Super. It's $290 on Newegg, so I wouldn't bother. Yeah, no. Forget about 20 series. That's like so old. No. I really think, like, yeah, this one or that. Like, do the NVIDIA ones even have any kind of incentive? Like, is there even a reason to buy the NVIDIA cards? Like, the only reason why I would consider NVIDIA cards is for, like, CUDA acceleration for like, professional applications. When it comes to gaming, I can't really recommend NVIDIA cards currently. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the big thing in my mind that makes NVIDIA win against AMD has nothing to do with gaming, in my mind. It's all going to be, like, productivity. Because that's really where AMD needs to focus, is on the productivity side. Not so much the gaming. It's like, yeah, all they need to do is like improve ray tracing performance, but they're basically right there if you look at the product stack across the board. So, let's see. Is there like RTX 3060, I guess? Let's see. Do you get a free game with this? You don't get The Last of Us. Hold on. This is a 12 gigabyte 3060 for $375. This would allow us to play the game at 1080p 60 per their own recommendation. So that's similar to a 6600 XT. So this is how much I have to pay to get a 1080p 60 experience in The Last of Us. But like, what about AMD? So they're saying I need a 6600 XT. So that would be this one. Okay, so it's similar in price, actually. Wait a minute, hold on a second. Why is this one cheaper than that one? This one's the better deal. The 6650, but it only has 8 gigs versus 12 on the NVIDIA. But you actually get the game. And you get an additional... Okay, so you get $10 off. So this becomes $300. So this is $300 for the game and the card. Versus... Okay, you get $12 off. So that makes this, what, 367? So it's like... Or no, 363. So you get 363 for a 12 gigabyte card. But honestly, you know, like, the GPU is... unless you're doing productivity, like... You would never really run this graphics card above 1080p anyway. So it's like this kind of matters, but not as... This doesn't matter as much on this tier of graphics card as like a 3070. So I am leaning more toward this. This to me looks like a better deal. $300 and you get the game. You straight up get the game. And you're saving like $60+. And the Sapphire is better than the MSI. MSI Ventus is synonymous with hot and well, okay, because this is a 3060, it's not going to be hot. It might, okay, this is probably fine. It's because it doesn't use that much power. But I was going to say, like, if this was like a 3080, this thing's going to be loud. Like, straight up loud. Because it's Ventus. It's Ventus. It's supposed to be windy. It's supposed to make you feel like there's a breeze. So the way they do it, they turn up the fans. Spin the fans real fast. Generate that 40+ decibels in your ear. That's how they do it. Okay, meanwhile... Okay, so this is just straight up better deal, man. Like, I would just get this. This is straight up 300 with the game. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the reason why, guys, like, this is the reason why every time it comes to, like, recommending for gaming purposes and we're on a budget, because, let's be honest, at this tier of performance, at these resolutions, who cares about ray tracing? Because, like, ray tracing at 1080p on mid-range hardware is never really going to be a good experience, no matter what. So, I mean, yeah, there are exceptions, but long-term, no. It's not going to be a thing. Like, 2 years from now, new games with RT, they're not going to run good on this, and they're not going to run good on this either. So... Look at the 6700. Oh, this one? Yeah, but this one's not a... Oh, yeah, this one is a better deal because this is a stronger card. And it has more RAM. Yeah. So, okay. So this is another one. This is... You're paying $20 more than that 6650 XT. But you're getting more for basically for $20 more. You're still getting the game. You're getting 2 more gigabytes of RAM, and you're getting a faster GPU for $20 more. Like, that actually makes sense. This makes no sense. in comparison. So it's like, yeah. This is the reason why I almost never recommend the Ampere cards. And if my Hogwarts Legacy 3080 Ti video is anything to go by, the VRAM is the other thing. At least at 1440 and above. You get 16 lanes and... Oh, that's right. You did, yeah, the 6600 had the 8 lanes. Yeah, this is the full 16 lanes. Yeah, that's true. I'm moving to 1440p, 144. Wish my 50... Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be a struggle. I mean, it'll work, but it's like, yeah, the games are not gonna run that well. But yeah, like what Sahar was saying, like the 2060, that's like 4.5 years old. No, that's... The sun has set on that GPU. Nvidia announced a Redfall bundle. What's Redfall? I don't know what that is. Is that a game that's coming out soon, or... Oh, and just so that people know, like, just to give people an idea, this GPU is very similar to a PlayStation 5. So if you want to know, like, how your GPU stacks up against a PlayStation 5, up against the console life, the console experience of the current generation, this GPU that we're looking at right now is basically a PlayStation 5. We're looking at a PlayStation 5 as though it was on the PC. So, PlayStation 5 performance at 320, plus you get The Last of Us. Seems pretty decent to me. It's $200-ish less than a PlayStation 5. Now, obviously, it doesn't have all the other stuff that the PlayStation 5 has, but it enables PC gaming. It's an upcoming game, along with the Arc. I would say yeah. Yeah, the Arc is good too. It's just, yeah, and I think most, if you really just play modern games, I don't really think you're gonna have a bad experience on Arc. Arc only becomes questionable if you play a lot of older games, and even then, you know, like the whole, like the DXVK, I think that is fixing a lot of the kind of like performance issues. It's realistically though, like Arc will never really shine when it comes to old DX11 games. I think by the time Arc performs at the level of a 6700 XT in DX11 titles and older games, by that time Battle Mage will already be out. So at that point, it's like Arc will be, you know, last gen hardware. So, but if you play newer games, with the Intel Arc, you'll probably be fine. So yeah, I recommend it for DX12. I don't really recommend it for DX11. I mean, you can game on DX11, but you would get a better experience with AMD or Nvidia. You just get a more consistent experience with either Team Red or Team Green for DX11 and older games. Even the 6700 XT is approaching a nice price. Yeah, even that's a good deal too. Like that's the one that stood out to me, was like this ASRock Challenger. I kind of wish there was like a Sapphire one listed, but this is probably good too. 360. So basically this, see, here's the thing. This is a 3070 competitor. This card is somewhere between a 3060 Ti and a 3070. The other one, where is it? This one's like a 3070, the 6750 XT. So this is kind of like a 3070. So the thing is, if you look at this is a 3060. A 3060 is going for this much money versus a 3070 competitor for just $5 more. So it's like, people need to really like look into this more before they make a purchasing decision. And you get the game, and you get the game and a 3070 performance tier, 12 gigs of memory. So okay, 12 gigs. This is 12 gigs, but it's like this is a 6600 XT competitor. This is a 3070 competitor with the same amount of RAM as this guy. And you get the game. Like, why would somebody buy this over this? Here's the thing, guys. Check this out. Look, this thing has 151 reviews versus 54 reviews. Now, I know this is gigabyte. Okay, it's gigabyte. I admit this is a gigabyte. But who cares? 54 versus 151. And they have roughly a similar price. So this is what I mean by people just straight up buying without doing the research. Like, I wonder how many people are gonna I wonder how many people looked at this and like, oh, I need a 3060 so I can play on my 1080p monitor. I'm gonna go to Newegg and buy this. They're gonna straight up buy this. It's like, wait, hold on, guys, look at this. You could get the 1440p 60 for the same amount of money. Like, MSI Ventus is the garbage. Yeah, Ventus is the bad MSI one. Yeah. So I know we're comparing the Ventus with a Gigabyte gaming OC. You know, that's not saying much, but the thing is, the performance is the key, right? Like, we're talking about the same amount of money, roughly. It's a whole tier above the other one, and you get the game. Like, who can argue that this is worse value? Even though it's a gigabyte. Okay, it's like, okay, it's a gigabyte. Okay, then go get the other one. So let's look at 6750 XT. Let's just find one of these other ones then. Okay, like, there's the gigabyte. Oh, these aren't going to be as good of a deal because these are the better coolers. Okay, so the gigabyte one is the one that has the really good deal. That's why. So it looks like it's only a few of them. Like, let's see. This one. So here's one. It's 400. But it still has the free game. And this is probably a much better cooler. What's this? The MSI Mech. Oh, that's... No. Just no. But yeah, see. Red Devil. Like, that needs to come down. Does this actually have the game, though? Oh no, this is like some Bitcoin guys trying to sell this off. No, let's just no. So, yeah, it looks like it's only going to be this 1 gigabyte one. So I guess it's limited to certain SKUs and it has to be sold by Newegg. The 6800, was that one on the list also? The 6800... Man, the 6800 is hard to find, though. See, like, that one doesn't even show up in this list. This is an interesting little graphic. So they're saying 4K. The minimum for 4K is... I would agree with that. The 6800 is kind of what I consider the minimum. That's kind of like 3070 Ti. The only difference is the 6800 has 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the 3070 Ti only has 8. So it's like, yeah, the 3070 Ti is a no-go for 4K. But then, so it's like, yeah, this is kind of in the middle, and then this is kind of the end of the... I feel like they probably should widen the 1440p. Like, I would almost include... I don't know, this makes sense, the way they're, like, AMD's own marketing. Assuming AMD made this, because this looks like one of their PowerPoint slides, but that's kind of accurate. You can get the game with it, but it doesn't show up on the list. Okay. So we'd have to go and find, like, one of them manually. Yes, but see, these are okay. But this Gigabyte one, man, these are all XT. That's a 900 right there. So this is one. Here's one. Really, it's just Gigabyte. Gigabyte's just trying to sell through all their stock because Gigabyte's usually, when it comes to AMD, like people who buy Radeon cards, Gigabyte's usually the last pick. Or they're definitely down on the list in terms of like which one people will actually buy if you're buying Radeon. This isn't even like an Aorus. This is just like a straight up generic Gigabyte. It's just straight up Gigabyte. It's like we're not Aorus, we're Gigabyte. So 465. You posted the link for it. Hold on, let me see. You posted the link for it? I don't see it. Hades put the last thing I see in the Discord is so let's see. You were tempted to get a Gigabyte card just because of the 3 years of warranty. Yeah. My favorite Sapphire. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yeah, this one has it. Yeah, the only problem is this is starting to creep up to around 500, which is kind of where the 6800 XT sits. So, but I noticed the prices have gone back up though, like compared to November. Although back in November you could barely find these. Sapphire prices are worse. The reason why Sapphire prices are worse is because Sapphire's the best quality though. Like, see, like this one's over 500, but okay, yeah, I guess they've gone back up. Like the XT. Well, see, here's this one's an XT, so it seems like this is actually a good predict. This is like a good predictor or a good indicator of what you guys can expect the 7800 XT and the 7700 XT to cost. Because like let's think about this. So the 7900 XT is 900. But it's kind of falling to around 800. So I'm guessing like a 7800 XT will probably be $699. It's probably going to be right around $700 because remember, the original MSRP of a 6800 XT was $650. It was $649, so $650. So, AMD's probably going to do the whole like Nvidia, it's inflation. Oh, it's TSMC raising the prices on us. Woe is me. I have to pass the buck to the customer, $50 upcharge, over last gen. Something like that. Because AMD never actually raised the price on the top SKU. Like, the 6900 XT's MSRP was $1,000 back in 2020. And the current flagship is also $1,000 MSRP. So it's like AMD didn't actually raise it. In fact, they kind of lowered it because the 6950 XT was $1,099 or $1,100, right? So the 6950 XT was $1,100. Then the XTX 7900 XTX was $1,000. So they kind of like went down. But you can look at NVIDIA and see the same thing. Like 3090 Ti was $2,000. 4090 is $1,600, so it's like okay, but if we remove those outliers, those like last gen flagship is what I call them, like the 6950 and the 3090 Ti, like if you remove those, then it's like Nvidia upcharged by like 100 and AMD stayed flat, so it's like I kind of think that the price of a 7800 XT is probably going to be $699. So it's not too bad if you look at it compared to gen-on-gen price increase. And then like if there is a 7800, that's going to probably be $600, like, and then it just goes down from there. So that's kind of what I expect. I feel like AMD's pricing is a lot easier to predict. Nvidia's is the one that's kind of harder to decide on, or like to try to guess. I know there was those rumors, the $750 4070. That is straight up wrong. That's way too close to the $800 MSRP of the 4070 Ti, which is basically terrible value for a 12 gigabyte card in 2023. That card will age like milk, so I totally don't recommend that one. Really, the only good ones from Nvidia right now are the 4080 and the 4090. And the 4080 is too much. Like, the 4080 should be the same price as the XTX for what it is. So it's like, I mean, okay, at most $1,100, right? Like, they need to drop that thing, though. Like, $1,200 starting is just stupid for an 80, for a non-TI 80 card. So, and that just makes it so hard to figure out what are they going to price all the 70, the 60, the 60 Ti, you know, like, that's why Nvidia is super hard to predict in terms of the pricing. Yeah, so in terms of the AMD cards, though, let me bring back up Paint. So what I recommend, this is my own personal, like, list. So for AMD, for Radeon AIBs, like, first is Sapphire. Like, this is the top tier. This is like the best one. Then second is kind of hard. Second is a tough choice for me. Like, it's probably gonna be Power Color. I have to give the win to Power Color for second place. Only because I feel like Power Color, in the last 10 years, Power Color has really tried to improve. Like, they've really stepped up their game. If you look at a Power Color from 10 years ago compared to the Red Devil that they have now, it's like a completely different world. And then XFX is number 3. XFX sometimes is really good. Like, they're actually better than Power Color. I do think that XFX makes nicer looking graphics cards than Power Color. I personally like the aesthetic design of the XFX cards more than the Power Color cards. I'm not a big fan of the Red Devil marketing, but I do think that in terms of the quality, Power Color gives you more heatsink, meaning Power Color's graphics cards are heavier than XFX cards, so they tend to cool better because they just give you more metal to soak up the heat, just like Sapphire. But Power Color doesn't innovate as much as Sapphire does when it comes to actually cooling. And if you don't know why, or if you don't understand why I'm saying that, you need to go look at, like, one of the Gamers Nexus teardown videos for one of the Sapphire cards. The best example I can give you is when Steve did a teardown of the Sapphire Pure Nitro Plus RX 6950 XT from last year. About a year ago, he did that. And that card, it was probably May of last year. But yeah, that just kind of shows, like, how good their engineering is. Yeah. So the Sapphire is definitely one step ahead of, like, all the other Radeon AIBs. But Power Color and XFX are very similar. Like, honestly, if you have to choose between one of them, I would just say get whichever one is cheaper or has the better deal or has, like, a better instant promo code, like $10, $15 off, $20 off at Newegg or whatever. So, but these two are very similar. And then after them would probably be ASRock. ASRock is relatively new to making GPUs, but they're not bad. I know Joey has a Tai Chi 7900 XTX. They just haven't been in the market long enough to really know, like, longevity-wise. But then after them would probably be MSI, but not the Ventus. But basically MSI, but not Ventus. And then after them would be Asus. And then last would be Gigabyte. And the reason why Gigabyte's last is because Gigabyte has skimped on AMD on, like, putting a proper cooler on AMD cards so many times in the past that like Gigabyte would try to cool a 300 watt AMD Radeon card with like a GTX 970 cooler. Like, come on, guys, you're not even trying at that point. And that's the reason why I would never consider Gigabyte for either AMD or NVIDIA. Because the way I look at it, it's like, okay, Gigabyte goes above and beyond to put their Aorus Master on their 4090s and their 4080s. But it's kind of laughable to me that Gigabyte will go and throw an Aorus Master quad slot or 3.5 slot cooler on an RTX 4080, but they'll only put like their Gigabyte Aorus Elite, which is like a 3-slot cooler, on the XTX. And I'm like, are you seriously going to put less metal on a higher wattage GPU just because your NVIDIA one, the NVIDIA BOM cost is probably slightly higher than the AMD one because they have to pay the NVIDIA tax, you know, on the inside side facing to NVIDIA to buy the chip. So it's like, are you really going to do that and then like shortchange the AMD customer? It's like, well, because of that, you guys are on my list. So that's the reason why I won't buy a Gigabyte, even if I'm looking at an NVIDIA card, because it's like, if you're gonna offer Radeon and GeForce, you better do good on both brands, because if you only put all your eggs in one, just because it sells more, sorry, I'm just not going to consider you as a brand. Like that's my philosophy, and that's kind of the reason why I also label Asus and MSI toward the bottom of the list when it comes to Radeon. So guys, remember, we're talking about Radeon GPUs, not GeForce. If we're looking at a GeForce list, this is going to be completely different for me. But yeah, this is kind of the order. At least in your country has outrageous prices way over Sapphire. Yeah, like Asus in my mind over the last few years, and we talked about this when we were talking about motherboards. I think Asus has grown way too proud and big-headed in my own kind of like perception of Asus as a company, as a brand. So I tend to just vote with my wallet, and I'm just not going to buy their stuff anymore. You know, like, that's just how I look at it. I won't buy an Asus graphics card, I know that. In fact, out of all the graphics cards that I've ever owned, the only card that I've ever had issues with from a hardware standpoint was the Asus Matrix Platinum HD 7970. And the card was okay. The problem was, and I have a YouTube video about this. In fact, did I show you guys this video? How to fix Asus Matrix Platinum artifacts. Let's see. Did I show you guys this? Hold on, is this... Did I show you guys this video? I don't know if I talked about this. So, this is the only graphics card. You guys, some of you guys on the channel who are watching saw my GPU collection video. Out of that entire collection of all those graphics cards, I only have one Asus graphics card in the entire collection. It's this graphics card you're looking at right now, the Asus Matrix Platinum HD 7970. So this thing competed with a GTX 680 or a GTX 770 back in the day, for reference, for those who aren't familiar with this card. But essentially, Asus, the cooler is great. The cooler is dead quiet. The problem is, as we will show, so basically what was happening is when I was playing Final Fantasy XIV, randomly I would get memory artifacts. Like the screen would just start glitching and like moving, like all these little triangles are going crazy and stuff. So I'm like, okay, we have a RAM problem, VRAM problem. So it's like, I gotta take this thing apart and see what's going on. So I go and I take it apart. I'm like, okay, it's obviously not the GPU. That's good. So there's the problem right there. So what is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with this picture? The problem is you can see VRAM chips right here. There's VRAM that's not cooled at all. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each one of these. Wait, why is there? No, there's. I think there's like 2 more over here. I think this is a 3 GB card. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Why is it 8? Oh, 9, 10? No. 9? Or is there 1 right there? No, it's like 4. Well, anyway, the point is, it's a 3 GB graphics card. The point is, this Asus card had 4 memory chips that were properly cooled with this Unisync right here. But these 4 were completely uncooled. And the thing is, this is the Asus flagship, the Matrix Platinum. This is what you guys would consider a Strix 4090 today. So this is like the super edition, over-engineered, custom AIB, custom board, etc., whatever. I think this is like 20-phase VRM. So anyway, the point is, they go and put a 20-phase VRM on here and all this over-engineered stuff, and then they leave 4 of the Hynix memory chips uncovered, uncooled, and they overvolt the RAM. They overvolt the RAM in the VBIOS to 1.6 volts. 1.6 volts. Because you know how I was able to fix the problem? The way I isolated it, I undervolted the RAM to 1.5 volts, which is the spec for this GDDR5, I think, or whatever this was running, GDDR3, whatever it was. I think it was GDDR3. Yeah, GDDR3 ran at 1.5 volts. That makes sense because that was DDR3. So, or no. Anyway, the point is, it was overvolted from the factory. And when I run it at 1.5 volts, I don't get any artifacts. So I know it's like, okay, the overvolt is doing something, so the RAM is running too hot. So I open it up. Sure enough, 4 RAM chips are not covered. So I go and I basically, he's like, hey, these Hynix chips aren't covered. So we have to mod this thing. So I go to Micro Center. I get the VRAM chip cooler things. There's adhesive on there. You literally stick all them on there. So see, now we have 4 of these RAM chips. Now they're properly cooled. And then I say, okay, I can't fit the cooler on because the thing is there. So I basically have to end up bending I take some pliers and I bend these on purpose so that they can fit underneath the heatsink. And that fixes the problem. Basically, the conclusion is you do this mod and it fixes the problem. No more artifacting. No need to have to RMA it, because even if you RMA it, you're probably going to get another one that will artifact at some point in the future too, because the RAM's still not covered. So basically, the end of the story is, after that experience, I just don't buy Asus graphics cards anymore. Now, obviously, I know they probably don't do stupid things like this anymore, but that just left a bad experience in my mind. So there you go. That's why I don't buy Asus cards anymore. So that's why this list is what it is. And they're way too expensive compared to, like, look at the 4090. The 4090 is like $2,000. An Asus Strix 4090 is $2,000. And I don't even think it looks better than the reference card. So yeah, that's basically the list. If you're new, if you're considering an AMD Radeon card, like, that's kind of the list. It's like, okay, Gigabyte should be down here. But you also have like those other ones like Vision Tech, HIS Diamond, but those guys don't even really do anything anymore. I think they got out of the GPU business, like EVGA. The Founders Edition is better than the Asus ROG Strix. I mean, that's not what people at Micro Center told me. What much did it, how much did it save for not heat sinking? Yeah, I know. It's very dumb. Like, that's, yeah. But like, in comparison, right, like, let's go to Gamers Nexus teardown video. So like this card, this is an example of why I always consider Sapphire the best one. So this one, okay, for those wondering, this card is, you can't buy one of these anymore because it was like a limited run. This is the 6950 XT Nitro Plus Pure. This card was like really popular in Korea for some reason, like when it first came. I don't know why. I just know it was. But anyway, this one in particular. So one thing I will say about this card is it's over-engineered. And when he does the teardown, you'll understand why. We're going to look at it. Couple things. So for those wondering, fun fact, these fans on the 6950 XT Pure are the exact same fans on the 7900 XTX Nitro Plus. So that awesome looking 7900 XTX from Sapphire, it uses the same fans that are on this over-engineered card. And he comments about the fans. And the other thing too is like they use this quick disconnect thing where you can easily replace these. It's like a single screw. You'd have to watch. I'm just kind of skipping around, but you can see like that's user serviceable. So that puts this on like a whole different level in terms of like user-friendly design, consumer-friendly design. Let's get to the teardown here. That's the LED bar or the strip on the back. They have cooling on the back. They actually use the back plate as a heat sink as opposed to a heat trap. In fact, I think Sapphire was one of the first AIBs to start doing that. They were the first to feature the flow-through design. We've talked about this. It was not NVIDIA. Sapphire did this on the R9 Fury in 2015. And then they've got the fuses. But what I wanted to show is this. Wait, hold on. Did he show it? No, he's just doing that. Where's the... Hold on. Where's the part with the unisync? Or was it back here? Interesting base plate. So I want to show you guys the base plate. So see, all the memory has its own cooling. This is the thing that, where is it? Oh, yeah. This is it. So the thing is, the cool thing about Sapphire is they actually have separate groups of heat sinks for the cooling. So like, for instance, what he's holding right now, this massive heatsink, this is kind of like a Noctua NHD 15 or a U12S, but it's split. So think of like a Noctua where it's like two sets of fins, but it's like bent outward like that. So they've got two things. This is only for the GPU die. This takes all the heat from the GPU die. The VRM and the memory has its own separate system. So like, for instance, what he's showing now, this is for the VRAM. So the VRAM has its own independent passive heatsink array separate from the GPU die. So they don't share the same heatsink to absorb the heat from both sources. And then the VRM has its over here too. But the VRM, no one really cares because the VRM can run really, really hot anyway. It's not really going to be a problem. So this is the sort of reason why, like, this is what I mean by Sapphire goes above and beyond when it comes to engineering the cooling design. And that's the reason why they are, like, #1 in terms of the quality. If you're looking for, like, an AMD card. A lot of people like to compare, like, a lot of people will say, I've seen this on Reddit a couple times, like, people will say Sapphire is the EVGA of AMD cards. That's not really... So the thing is, EVGA was never, like... Okay, they did have the Kingpin edition, but other than the Kingpin for the overclockers, or for the XOC crowd, like, EVGA's cooling solutions were never on the same level as Sapphire. Like, the thing in my mind that made EVGA so legendary wasn't so much the engineering behind their cards, it was more so the customer support. Like, EVGA's customer support was number one, best in class, hands down. Like, they put all the others to shame. Like, straight up. This is fact. Like, this is the reason why EVGA had such a really, really good fan base for so many years. Not because their cards were the best. They were good. They weren't bad. But they weren't like this kind of over-engineered good, if that makes sense. Whereas Sapphire just builds a really good product. EVGA had really good warranty and customer service. If we're talking like the AMD EVGA, that would have been XFX. XFX was the one that had the legendary customer support and the warranty, the lifetime warranty that was it was transferable, but then became non-transferable. So because basically because of the Ethereum and the crypto craze, like XFX realized you can't really do lifetime warranty because these guys are, they're buying way too many GPUs and they're running them 24/7 in this barn or something. So it's like, that's gonna abuse the warranty system. So that's kind of what killed off the lifetime warranty during those crypto waves. They also had the EVGA step up program. EVGA step up program. So EVGA was good, but it was good for different reasons. Because honestly, I'm not trying to say EVGA was bad, but if we go back and we look at the time when like RTX, remember that era where EVGA had 1070s that had, I think it was some kind of capacitor or inductor, I can't remember, but EVGA had 1070s that had like a fire hazard at one point. And then there was also that issue with the 3090s dying from Amazon's New World MMO. Remember that? Like, it was mostly EVGA cards that were dying, and they found out that it was because EVGA was using like a cheaper capacitor on the back of the GPU die, and anyone that was doing that, and they were cutting costs, were more prone to running into that issue. That was kind of like a cost-saving measure that EVGA did. Basically, they're making their GPU built to a lower standard than the NVIDIA reference. So, that's not really good when it comes to talking about over-engineering the design. But they had really good support. So when people compare EVGA and they say like Sapphire is just like EVGA, but they're the AMD one, it's like, not really. No, not in my mind. No. Like, EVGA was good for support and post-sale support. Sapphire is just straight up good. Like, Sapphire is just straight up good. Good hardware. And it really the way I really learned this was the fact that during like the Vega 290X and the Vega 64, the Fury, the 290X, all those cards that used a lot of power, like 300 watt GPUs, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is AMD was the power hog for a long time. And because Sapphire only makes AMD cards, they would design their cards to handle that high wattage. What is going to be EVGA market now, though? I know they sell power supplies and motherboards. It's probably going to be peripherals, if I had to guess. But yeah, it's mostly going to be power supplies. They're reselling like a lot of Superflower power supplies. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like the XT, especially if you have like an AIB one, and if you're overclocking, you run the power limit plus 15%, then yeah, the XTX can easily use the same amount of power as a 4090. Like both of them in my mind are very similar in power consumption. But if you're using the made by AMD one, like the reference AMD one, it only has a dual 8-pin. So it can't really pull that much power. But then it's power limited, right? So then it won't perform as good. So, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the point is, if you're considering an AMD GPU, especially like a high-end AMD GPU, like a 6800 XT or better, yeah, you're gonna want to kind of stick to this general list in terms of who's better than who, right? So, and I just say take it from me. Like, you guys have seen my GPU collection video, and I have a lot of AMD cards. I do have a lot of NVIDIA cards too, but I have mostly AMD cards, and that's kind of why I know this. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. Okay, so what else? So we kind of talked about hardware. In terms of like product availability, I think everything is kind of available now. Like, is it still super hard to find a let's see, is it still really hard to find like RTX 4090? Let's just see. RTX 4090. But see, like this is such a waste. This is such a waste of money. Like, that's so dumb. This is like the Captain America edition or something. I don't know, like what. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's like it's Asus. It's like Asus. So this is an example of what happens when you. This is basically when you stack. This is stacking buffs. This is a manufacturer stacking buffs. They're stacking the NVIDIA tax. They're stacking the Asus tax on top of the NVIDIA tax. That is what this is an example of. Plus Strix branding tax. ROG branding tax adds like another $100. So let's think about this for a second. $1,600 NVIDIA tax. So then like Asus is like, okay, we're going to put $200 because it's Asus. So that makes it $1,800. Oh, but it's ROG Strix. So that's going to be another $200. So you're paying the Strix, you're paying ROG tax, Asus tax, and NVIDIA tax. Wow. Wow, fantastic. The Tough is like $200 less. Like, I still, like, okay, that's dumb. This is sad. Like, this is some, okay, GH Electronics? Yeah, no. Wait, whoa. Titanium and black. Okay. Yeah. The only one here that makes sense is the Zotac. The only one that makes sense is this one right here. And even then, this is $50 over MSRP, but it's not insanely outrageous overpriced. And it looks like a gym shoe, or it looks like a sneaker. It looks really nice. So this one's good. This is my favorite one. I said this during the 4090 launch last year. Like, if I was gonna get an AIB 4090, this is the one I would get because it's actually close to MSRP. In fact, if you're near a Micro Center, you can actually get this one at MSRP. And yeah, get Redfall Bite Back Edition with select. Okay, so you get the game. You get the game. I don't know what this game is. Is this like a Left 4 Dead type game? Like a team-based survival zombie sort of thing? This looks like it could be a pretty fun game, though, honestly. Bethesda? It's like Left 4 Dead. Okay, that's kind of what I thought when I looked at it. It looks pretty good at first glance. But yeah, this is the one I would get. So it's like all this other stuff is just noise. Like, Gigabyte. This isn't even the Aorus. Like, what is this? Like, why are they selling this thing? This is just the plain Jane Gigabyte edition for $100 more than MSRP. Man, I don't know how they can justify. Is this like a two? And this is the Faildozer 2-finger. This is the two finger. This is the two finger. Where's the flame of frenzy, or the frenzied flame? Where's the three-fingered outer god with the three fingers? What is this? This isn't the true Elden Ring. What is this? Okay, people who have no idea what I'm talking about. I was just making like Elden Ring references right there. That was supposed to be an Elden Ring joke. But anyway, we talked about this on the previous stream now, or like back in, you know, when the 4090 launched. Like, it's got to have the three fingers. Step 1, have three fingers. So this one's got three fingers. That's good. Step 2, include an anti-sag bracket. Okay, it's got one of those. That's good. Step 3, okay, obviously they're all going to come with the octopus plug, whatever you want to call it, for the power. So that's good. So this one checks all the boxes, and it's a reasonable price, as reasonable as the price of a 4090 could possibly be. So let's look at this Gigabyte one for comparison. So it has, does it have a support bracket? First of all, it has two fingers, so it automatically disqualified itself. And then it has no support bracket, and it's like this heavy and gigantic. It's like, no, man, like, no. That card is worse than the Founders Edition? You should just buy that card and stream the game? You mean the Zotac? So first thing, I should just buy this one? And stream the game, the Redfall. Is this out now? This is not out though, right? When is this game out? That's funny. Yeah, the Gigabyte's probably worse than the thing. I'd have to look at the reviews on the Zotac. No, the reason why I'm not going to get a 4090, I said this before, like, the 4090 is a card that I'm going to completely ignore. Like, the only card I'm interested in from Nvidia for this year, throw the card away and keep the game. Yeah, yeah, throw away the $1,600 and keep the Oh wait, this game is $100. Why are they saying it's $99? This is a $100. Is this really a $100 value? Oh, is it one of those, like, okay, Redfall Bite Back Edition? So it's like one of those ones that has, like, the DLC stuff on here. Throw the $1,600 away and, like, keep the $100 value. Yeah, well, the reason why I'm, like, to me, the 4090 is a complete skip. Like, everybody's saying how it's so great and stuff. It's like, it's only, what, like, 20% faster than an XTX at 4K. The only reason why this card would make sense is if I did a whole bunch of productivity work that did not use DaVinci Resolve. But because I do everything with DaVinci Resolve when it comes to video editing, and I personally don't use any of the other CUDA accelerated software apps, so it's like I don't really stand to benefit from this thing from a productivity standpoint. So at that point, it just falls back on, like, best value for gaming, and it's like, this is not the best value for gaming. You get 4 weapon skins with the Bite Back Edition. Yeah, but the reason why this is a hard pass for me is because it's, not only is it, like, the amount of money that I could spend on a really nice workstation laptop, like the one I showed in that previous stream, but it's like, no, because I can take that kind of money and I can spend it on so many, like, with the amount of other hardware stuff that I could get for this kind of money just doesn't justify the price of this card at all. And that's the reason why I won't get one. The other reason why is because the only NVIDIA cards that I'm interested in are the TI cards. So, like, the 4080 Ti should launch sometime this year. Obviously, it's not going to be as fast as a 4090. It's going to be somewhere between 4080 and 4090. So, you know, whenever that decides to show up, then I'll start considering NVIDIA again. But probably 4090 Ti is more like what I would expect to upgrade to, because with what I have right now, like, the XTX handles whatever I throw at it. So it's like, I don't really need this type of card, and it's like, why would I just... Yeah, it's like, this is the sort of thing where it's like the train has left for the 4090 in my mind. So I'll probably never get one of these cards. If I do get another NVIDIA card, it's going to be a TI variant. For those water-cooled GPUs, do you need any other parts for them? No, not really. No. Because the thing is, the water-cooled GPU is not as heavy. The air cooler, those big air cooler ones, are heavier than this. See, it's a 2-slot, so no. No, I think the 4090 TDP is going to be the same. It's going to be 450 watt. It's just going to be the fully unlocked die. It will use a little bit more power than the 4090, but it's not going to be like leaps and bounds. It's going to be the same. Worst case scenario, the 4090 Ti will use the same amount of power as a 3090 Ti, and that thing used a lot of power. So it's like, that's kind of the worst case in my mind. Because realistically, NVIDIA's not going to launch something that is going to trip breakers in people's homes and apartments. That's just not how it's going to work. So, yeah, like, this is one of those things where it's like, it's a nice card. It is a nice card. It is fast. But it's like, how much do you think a 90 class card should cost? Right? Like if this thing was let's put it this way. If this thing was $1,200, which would then force everything else down the stack to be significantly lower, because think about it, if the 4090 launched at $1,200, and that would mean AMD's card would have to be like $800 or $700, the XTX that is, and then the 4080 would have been like $700, $750, maybe $800. Maybe $800. So like, let's look at it this way. So if the 4090 was $1,200, the 4080 would have been like no more than $800. And I think that would have made it a lot easier to sell. And then the 4070 Ti would be, like 600, 650. Things would have been more normal. NVIDIA screwed up the market by setting the $1,600 starting price for the 4090. Because of that, everything was just messed up, like, for this entire generation. Because AMD, they priced it that high, we'll just go with 1,000, like we did last gen. Because I have a feeling AMD was probably planning to sell the XTX for like $800 or $700, kind of like last time, but NVIDIA set the bar so high, they made a huge runway, and like AMD's like, well, let me fly my plane off that same runway right behind you, right? So that's what ended up happening, and then they also did something dumb by putting 4080 at $1,200. I think that's the reason why 4080 is going to go down in history as the worst priced 80 series card from NVIDIA. No matter how you look at it. It's like, yeah, it's a nice card, but it's like, like price to performance ratio, not so much. You're going to need the entirety of the 3 Mile Island. For those water-cooled GPUs, okay, the Liquid Devil, or yeah, so not really. I'm curious to see so it's going to be the same. It's probably, if I had to guess, 4090 Ti is going to be somewhere between, it's going to be like between 4090 and 3090 Ti power consumption. I don't know where it will land between the two of them, but it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark. I don't think it's going to be more power than a 3090 Ti. Because remember, guys, we're talking about TSMC versus Samsung. So 3090 Ti was on Samsung, and it was so inefficient. And that was the reason why it was a power hog. Whereas now we're on TSMC, so I don't really see the 4090 Ti using more power than a 3090 Ti. It's probably going to be less, but it will be more than a 4090. That's the way I see it. So, yeah, that's the reason why you don't see me talk too much about NVIDIA on the channel, because, like, there's really nothing for me to talk about. Their Ampere 30 series GPUs are still too much money, so I can't recommend them to anybody. But people keep on buying them, so whatever, okay. Just keep driving those prices up, everybody. I guess that's the end of that. And then the 40 series cards are just way too much money. So it's like, that's the reason why. And I'm just kind of waiting for those TI refreshes. So, because it's like, give me the fully unlocked die, and then I'll probably start thinking about them again. So until then, they're not really on my radar, right? Like, I'm more interested in seeing what Battle Mage ends up doing. I'm more interested in seeing how the rest of the product stack from NVIDIA and AMD will play out the rest of this year. So let's see what a 7800 XT is priced at and what it performs like. But I really think that we already know that. We already know. Like, I'm going to go ahead and guess. Like, okay, we're going to be in the end of the stream here. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to predict the price of these graphics cards, because this is what the whole point of the stream was supposed to be about. So, here, let's go down here. Let's use this. So, RX 7800 XT. What do you guys think this is going to be priced at? Because I already kind of know what I'm going to say. I just want to see what other people think. Oh, Hades is back. Imagine a GPU made by Global Foundries. It exists. It's called the RX Vega 64. I think that's Global Foundries. 600? I think it's going to be higher. It could be, though. 650. So I'm kind of with Marcelo, but I kind of think it's going to be 700. So I think this is going to be 699. I'm going to say 699 for this, because this is going to be, well, it could be 650. It could actually be 650. Because the thing is, like, if they do 650, this is equal to this MSRP. That means they can say we're the good guys because we didn't change the MSRP. So that does actually make sense. What really boils down to is how this performs compared to, like, how much weaker is this than a 4070 Ti? Because 4070 Ti is like 800. So I'm thinking this can be priced at 699, and it will probably still work. The only way it would be at 600 is if the 4070 Ti is cheaper. Because I kind of think the 4070 Ti is going to be faster than this card, if I had to guess. Or actually, hold on, I take that back. I think that this card will be roughly equal to the 4070 Ti in terms of performance. Because AMD already has a card that's the same performance level. So the 4070 Ti is equal to the 6950 XT. These two cards perform roughly the same. And this card is currently $699. We just saw that earlier. So this is already going for $699, and it's the same performance as the 4070 Ti. So I'm expecting the 7800 XT to perform very similar to the 6950 XT. So that's the reason why I think it's going to be $699. I think what AMD's going to do is they're going to clear out this guy, selling it at that clearance price. Then all they're going to do is launch RDNA 3 and start it at the exact same price as what this thing was selling at on clearance. So that and this is going to be roughly the same performance. So they're not really going to win like any kind of award for like performance per dollar, because it's like they already kind of win that with this currently. but they're not really going to change the narrative in any meaningful way. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen. And then I don't know if this is going to be a thing, or if it's just going to be like RX 7700 XT. I have no idea. But if I had to guess, assuming there is something like a cut down of that one, what do you guys think this? If there's a hypothetical 7800, what do you guys think that's going to be? Because I kind of think the XT is going to be 700. It's just going to slide right in as the replacement to the 6950 XT. It's going to perform about the same, and they're going to price at the same amount of money. So it's like, it's not really going to be that exciting because of that. But I think this one is probably going to be, this one is either going to be $599. Well, this one might actually be $599 now that I think about it. That makes sense. And then this one would be $479. Yeah, $479. So basically the same as like last generation. If the XT exists, you would agree that in the XT and price that at $650 instead. I think there's going to be a $100 difference between the two of them. I think 50 is too close. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be more like this. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen for the AMD cards. And then for the NVIDIA ones, who knows? Because there's going to be RTX 4070 for... A lot of people are saying 750. That's complete nonsense. This is probably going to be $699 also. See, I think what's going to happen is it's going to be the same... It's going to be the same narrative that we're already used to. It's going to be... this guy is close to this in rasterization, but it's not in ray tracing. And the 4070 is going to win in RT. It's going to have less video memory, but it's going to be priced roughly the same. So I kind of think that's what's going to happen. In fact, I actually think that, now that I think more about it, I think the RTX 4070 will be cheaper. I think it's going to be like $649. Although NVIDIA doesn't typically launch cards. No, you know what? I don't know. Might actually, if it's $599, that's 600 versus 800. That's too far apart. So it's got to be like it's got to be something like this, or maybe something like that. I can totally see NVIDIA doing something like that because they pull these kind of stunts, like these $20 stunts with the Pascal series in the past a lot. So like, they could do something like that to try to make it look like it's further apart from a 4070 Ti. $4070 won't sell for more than 600. You want the 7700 mainly for the encoder. Why they don't do weird prices like that or that? That's what the tax does. Because for some reason, like in the US, the tax is always added after. It's not included in the VAT. So it's like, yeah. They end up costing that, Marcelo. That's what they end up costing. Like, they end up being those kind of weird numbers with the tax. But yeah, like, I don't know. Like I said earlier, NVIDIA is so hard to predict because they do so many weird games with the pricing. I know it's going to be 600 something. I don't know what the actual number is going to be, but it's going to be 600 something. It could be 629. It could be 649. It could be 679. It's one of those three numbers. I have no idea. Like, the lowest it could possibly be is 599. That's like the lowest. So you know what? Now that I think about it, they could do that. They could do MSRP $599, but then like all the AIB cards end up being, $649, $679. You know what I'm saying? So I can see NVIDIA doing that, starting at $599, but then in reality it never actually sells for $599, because that's just how it goes with GeForce. So, you know what? That's probably what it's going to do, or what they're going to do, is this kind of thing. So it's going to be like because this is a $200 price delta, though, between the 70 and the 70 Ti, which I think is too big of a delta. But the thing is, when you start looking at, like, the delta between a 4080 and a 4090 and a 4070 Ti and a 4080, then now you can kind of justify this $200 delta between the 70 and the 70 Ti. So, you know what? $599 does actually make a little bit more sense logically. So that leaves the 4060 Ti, assuming that thing exists, and then the RTX 4060, because these would be the other two. So, this one, assuming this is actually a thing, because, you know, this might not even exist, or at least it might not even show up this year. But the Ti, like if that thing's 600 MSRP, this will probably be 529, and then this one will be like $399. So 405, that's like a $130 difference, and then you have like a 30. Well, you know, this could also just be like 500. Well, this, whoops, I messed it up. What did I do? What? That's not what I wanted to do. Well, what I'm saying is like this. I hate when that happens. This could be 500. This could literally just be $499. Like, they could also just do that. And just make all of them be $100 apart, starting MSRP, just to make it easy. So, you know, actually, this kind of makes more sense. So, yeah. So, this is probably what I think is going to happen. So, it just kind of depends on how the AMD cards... Part of it also depends on how the AMD cards stack up in rasterization. Because at the higher end, so, like, at this level and above, RT is a valid argument in NVIDIA's favor. But then they gimp themselves on the VRAM at the 70 series cards. But we'll see what this is, because this thing is already gimped, like from the starts, with the 12 gigabytes at the price point. So, but this guy, we don't really know yet. Like, I'm guessing this will also be 12 or 10 gigabytes. But I don't really know, like, what the die is. So I don't know, like, is this going to be a 256-bit? Is this going to be a 320-bit? You know, it's like, I don't really know that info. Actually, no. This is like isn't this a 192-bit bus? Yeah, this is a 192-bit bus. Okay, so that means the biggest this could be is a 192. It's probably going to be like a 160. Well, I don't know. That's so weird, because that doesn't make any sense. Like, is this... Can anybody confirm? Or do I have to go to Tech Power Up? Like, what is this thing? Is this a 192-bit bus? I'm pretty sure I remember reading that the 4070 Ti is a 192. It's... Oh, okay. So this will be a 192. Yeah. See, that just sounds so bad. That sounds so bad. Like, okay, so this is going to be a 192. So that means this thing will either have 12 gigabytes of RAM, or it'll have 10 gigabytes of RAM. The 4070. I can totally see NVIDIA doing that. Like, NVIDIA can go ahead and put, like, 10 or 12 gigs of RAM on a 4070. Say the MSRP is $599, and then say how it's, like, excellent value because its ray tracing performance versus a 3080 is, like, so much better. So, therefore, it's totally worth it, and it's, like, $100 MSRP cheaper than a 3080 was. But again, you know, they're going to do the same thing that they did when they compared the 4070 Ti to a 3090 Ti. The 4070 Ti is weaker than a 3090 Ti in rasterization. The only thing that it wins in is ray tracing, and it has 12 gigabytes of memory. So it's like, it just kind of falls flat. So what they'll do is they'll probably do 12 gigs on the 4070 and say, hey, look, this thing is, the MSRP is $100 less than a 3080's MSRP, and it has 12 gigs of RAM, and it's way faster in RT, when in reality, like, the rasterization on this guy will only be probably like 3080 Ti. So if that, it might even be somewhere between 3080 and 3080 Ti. So yeah, not really that great. So the low end for 7000 should be 10 gig minimum if they want to do anything. The 7500 XT, if they make it, would be 8. Yeah, I think it's going to be 8. The reason why you're not really going to see a lot of like 10 and 12 gig cards at the lower end is because the BOM cost for the VRAM just doesn't really make much sense at the lower price of the market, or the lower end. The 4070 will have RX 6800. See, yeah, well, I mean, if it's like that, then that's going to be dead on arrival. Like, okay, if this is only like a 6800, because remember, a 6800 rasterization is like a 3070 Ti. So it's like, I kind of think the 4070 is going to be a little bit faster than that. I expect all the comparisons between the 4070 to be compared with the 3080. 10 or 12, it doesn't really matter. Like, I expect Nvidia's marketing to compare these two cards together, and they're gonna market it like, hey, this thing was $699 when it launched back in 2020. We're doing you a service by starting the MSRP $100 less, and we're giving you way better RT performance. That's how they're going to market this thing. That's going to be the go-to-market strategy. It's the only logical thing that makes sense, that would actually convince people to buy one of these things. A 70 class card at $600. Because remember, guys, this isn't the first time that Nvidia priced a 70 class card at $600. The first one that had that award was the 3070 Ti. 3070 Ti was $599 MSRP. So it's not like these insanely high prices aren't a thing. You posted an image of what they have for it currently. Yeah, but I don't know where they're getting that info. If that's the case, then that can't be $600 then. If that's true, the 4070 would be like $499. Because the price of like 6800 is down there. So it's like, yeah, no, I think it's going to be higher than that. I wouldn't have put too much weight in an unreleased spec on Tech Power Up. Nisco came to see the end. Yeah, we're at the end. You bought the 3070 Ti for 650 MSRP. Oh, that's euros, right? Is that euros? Yeah, it's euros. No, wait, that's not euros? What is that? Is that euros? Yeah, that's euros. But yeah, that's like what, $700? So you paid more than MSRP for that? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously the European market's starting price is probably different. MSRP of 3070 Ti is $600. Yeah, so what do you do to him? He forgot euros. I didn't forget euros. It's because I'm looking. You guys need to understand. Like, whenever I do the paint thing, I have to move the stream chat onto my 4K monitor because I'm showing you the monitor that's a 1440p monitor. So this, what you guys are seeing, is a 1440p display downscaled to 1080 for YouTube. But now, like, when I move everybody to 4K, like, all the chat is like super tiny because I'm running the monitor at 100% native scaling. So that's the reason I had to like look at that to make sure that's the euros. So yeah. So I think this is what's gonna happen. So AMD is gonna release a card. So meaning like it's gonna be it's not like, okay, the bottom line is all the cards that are coming out this year for the mainstream, for the high performance to mainstream and below, is gonna be lukewarm at best. Nvidia's gonna market this thing against a 3080 and try to say how it's so much nicer in ray tracing, and its starting price is $100 less, but it's a 192-bit part. And then AMD is gonna launch, like a $700 XT, which is gonna be the same as the outgoing 6950 XT's price, and the performance will be similar to a Ti, a 70 Ti. So it's like, okay, AMD is gonna be undercutting Nvidia for the same rasterization for $100, but doesn't really move the needle that much compared to the previous generation. So that's kind of like not so great. And then Nvidia's thing is also not gonna be that great. So that's basically what we're looking forward to. It'll be interesting to see how accurate we end up being, like how close we are to the actual reality when these products do come out, because I don't have any insider knowledge. I'm just complete guessing using logical, understanding the price of the last generation, understanding the expected performance tier, and then just making an educated guess. I think that's more fun than actually like having insider knowledge or leaks or anything like that. What do you in 2021. Oh, you got that thing in the dark times. You got that during the dark times, Nisco. That was in the midst of the dark times. Took me 3 months hunting and using Telegram drop bots. Yeah. Learned how to order under 50 seconds. I failed like 6 times. Yeah, so basically that's what's going to happen. So it's like, I guess the bottom line is nothing is really going to change. Like, the RDNA 2 prices are going to bleed over into RDNA 3 prices. The RTX 30 series prices are basically going to turn into RTX 40 series cards for roughly the same rasterization. Whatever AMD releases will be great compared to having that you can't render anything proper where NVIDIAs are concerned. Yeah, well, Marcelo, we're at the very end, so you made it to the end. That's probably going to be it for this stream, so I did manage to talk about what I wanted to talk about. The whole PS3 thing was kind of like off the wall, but anyway, that's what makes these streams a little bit more interesting than your average stream. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it. Once again, thanks for watching. And I'm probably going to do a video, an actual upload to the channel here in the next couple of days. I just need to finish the filming and editing for it and put everything together. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Once again, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.